This guy is completely dazed when he wakes up in a totally unfamiliar place. Minato has no clue what the hell is going on around him. Staring in the mirror, he sees a stranger with black hair and wonders where his signature silver hair went. Before Minato can even process his confusion, a doctor and a nurse suddenly walk into his hospital room. After running a few checks, the doctor is shocked to find that all the injuries from his recent car crash have completely healed. It is as if he was cured by holy magic. Well, actually, he was healed by holy magic. But what is this car crash they are talking about? Confused, Minato asks the doctor if his mana is completely depleted, but the doctor has absolutely no idea what he is talking do. He then mentions fighting monsters during that massive disaster, which only leaves the doctor and nurse even more bewildered. Did this kid lose his mind from staying in the hospital too long? The doctor asks him if he can state his name and what year it is. He replies that his name is Ichikami Minato, and it should be around 1970. Hearing this, the doctor feels a massive headache coming on. This kid is suffering from some serious brain damage. The doctor gently corrects him, saying his name is Kusanagi Minato, and the current year is 2022. Now it is Minato's turn to panic. Is he really Kusanagi Minato? And is it actually 2022? These two do not seem to be lying. Plus, that television is incredibly thin and crystal clear, and the calendar on the desk clearly says 2022. And he has never seen anything like the small device the nurse is scrolling through. This really is the future, and things are about to get interesting. An old-timer in a brand new era. How is he supposed to survive when he does not know what the hell is going on? The doctor explains that the disaster he mentioned happened 50 years ago and is long gone. Monsters still exist, but they are rare now, and the world has returned to its original peace. Well, even if this reality is hard to swallow, he should still count his blessings and be grateful. Now he has to accept that the original Ichikami Minato of 1970 died, sacrificing himself to save the world. Somehow, he reincarnated into the body of Kusanagi Minato, though nobody has any idea how such a miracle was even possible. A few weeks later, Minato is discharged from the hospital. He uses the original host's memories to find his way back to his apartment. Kusanagi Minato's parents passed away when he was young, so he has been living off their inheritance ever since. Minato lies on his bed, lost in thought. He never believed in reincarnation, so this miraculous second chance at life must be the work of a higher power. Looking through Kusanagi's school documents, Minato discovers that the boy was a student at the Kamui Magic Academy. Back in his day, there was no such thing as a magic school, so this sounds pretty exciting. Suddenly, a strange sound comes from his bag. He pulls out a smartphone showing an incoming call from someone named Tadano. Minato has no clue how to even use the thing, so he just tosses it aside and completely ignores it. Soon, his screen lights up with a barrage of spam messages from Tadano. One text reads, "I heard you got out of the hospital. Get your butt to school right now. I am completely broke." The next morning, Minato arrives at the academy. Even though he is technically old enough to be these kids' uncle, being back in school makes Minato feel a little nervous. It sounds like fun, but Minato immediately starts judging the school when he hears a student shouting at the top of his lungs. The guy shoots a pathetic little fire spell at a wooden dummy. Minato looks around with his expert eyes and notices that everyone else has incredibly weak mana too. He clutches his head in sheer disappointment. He cannot believe the descendants of modern mages are this pathetic. Compared to when Minato was just a beginner, these kids are not even 1/10 as strong as he was back then. With a disappointed look on his face, Minato walks into the building, completely ignoring all the whispering students watching him. Once inside the classroom, he cheers up. Sitting at a desk makes him feel like he is back in the old days, and he cannot help but feel a surge of excitement. Minato has no idea if the original owner of this body had any friends, but a gang of bullies immediately rolls up to his desk. Someone slams their foot down right behind him, shouting, "Hey, you piece of garbage. Are you ignoring my text now? You are just a pathetic Kusanagi. How dare you ignore me?" Minato calmly looks up and asks, "Who are you guys?" The red-haired bully glares at him and kicks his desk, shouting, "You trash! How dare you forget the great Tadano? You useless loser!" That is when Minato recalls the name Tadano from those text messages. "Oh, right, I remember now. Are you supposed to be my friend?" Tadano smirks and holds out his hand, asking, "Finally remembered, you idiot? Do you even know what friends are for?" Minato grabs his hand with an iron grip and says, "Of course, friends are supposed to help each other out." Startled by the sudden strength, Jun shudders and yanks his hand away. He grabs Minato by the collar, looking like he wants to tear him apart. Where is your money? Hand it over right now. Your dead parents left you a fortune, didn't they? Minato sighs as he finally realizes he is being extorted by school bullies. Tadano Jun swells up like a pufferfish, getting more and more pissed off by Minato's calm attitude. He is practically itching to punch him. Right then, the classroom door swings open, and a sweet, cheerful voice calls out, "Good morning!" A gorgeous girl with blue hair walks in, exuding absolute charm with her radiant face, perfect figure, and legs for days. Just looking at her has Jun completely mesmerized, practically drooling all over himself. Not wanting to look bad in front of his goddess, he mutters a quick threat and walks away. Coincidentally, their first class of the day is history. The professor is currently lecturing about the moment the Supreme Archmage, Ichikami Minato, sacrificed his life to bring an end to that horrific catastrophe. In the classroom, everyone is nodding off, thanks to the boring history lesson combined with the professor's sleep-inducing voice. It was a time when monsters swarmed across the globe, pushing humanity to the absolute brink of extinction. But the pioneer of magic at the time, the Supreme Archmage Ichikami Minato himself, refused to give up, triggering a legendary chain of events that everyone now knows by heart. The professor then asks the class if anyone knows exactly who Ichikami Minato was, prompting a blue-haired girl named Mizuha to jump to her feet and answer. He was the sole survivor of the very first calamity, and also the world's very first mage. On top of that, he is the entire reason the Kamui Magic Academy was founded in the first place, sir. As she speaks, Mizuha's eyes sparkle with pure admiration for her idol, Minato. The professor nods, confirming her answer is absolutely correct. Minato was indeed the first human to ever wield magic. This academy was established with the sole purpose of training mages to be just like him. He is the greatest mage in human history. The professor even emphasizes that this will definitely be on the upcoming exam. Meanwhile, the actual Minato is face down on his desk, desperately wishing the professor would stop talking because every single cell in his body is dying of embarrassment. His unusual trembling leaves his classmates completely baffled, but inside, he is deeply regretting his life choices. Why did he have to come here just to listen to people sing his praises for an entire hour? Still, looking around, it seems peace has made this new generation of mages incredibly soft. Minato stares blankly out the window at the clear blue sky. How long has it been since he last enjoyed this kind of peace? Before he knows it, the class ends, and the professor reminds everyone that tomorrow they will undergo a comprehensive magic assessment. Jun immediately struts over to taunt Minato, saying, "Hey, did you hear that? A comprehensive magic assessment. I can't wait to watch you make a complete fool of yourself tomorrow. It's gonna be hilarious." Minato just sighs, looking utterly bored. Does this idiot ever shut up? Minato has zero desire to deal with this anymore. Seeing Minato get up to leave, Jun starts mocking his parents. "Your folks didn't have any magic either, did they?" "Oh, wait, you're just a pathetic little orphan, aren't you? I totally forgot." Ha ha ha! The gang bursts into laughter, and that is the final straw for Minato. Even though the parents Jun is mocking belong to Kusanagi Minato and not his past self, this is still a direct blow to a man's pride. "Do your parents know you're this classless?" Minato calmly shoots back. That simple remark is enough to make Jun swell up with rage like a pufferfish. "What did you just say, you orphan trash? Don't you dare compare yourself to me?" Jun snaps, immediately summoning a magic circle. The sheer intensity of it bathes the entire room in a fiery red glow. Their classmates exchange worried glances. Is he seriously about to use magic inside the classroom? Jun hurls a blazing fireball straight at Minato, intending to incinerate him. Minato stands his ground, completely unfazed, while the rest of the students scramble away in terror. "Look out!" Mizuha yells, running desperately toward Minato. A massive, high-temperature explosion erupts, engulfing the entire room in an instant. Mizuha couldn't reach him in time. She can only fume at Jun, who loves to show off the second he gets a tiny bit of power. Showing zero concern for his classmates' safety, Jun gets irritated after being scolded by the class idol. "Hey, he's the one who provoked me. It's not my fault." A few seconds later, the flames die down, leaving behind nothing but a thick cloud of gray smoke that completely blocks their vision. As the smoke clears, a figure is seen standing perfectly still. Minato has one hand in his pocket and his bag in the other, completely unscathed, casually staring back at them. He scratches his head and utters a casual, "Not bad," leaving everyone unsure if it is a compliment or pure sarcasm. Jun, however, looks like he's just seen a ghost. How is he not even scratched after taking my attack head on? To Minato, A simple first-tier spell like that is easily blocked by a basic magic barrier. Without even needing any advanced magic, Minato had tolerated him because he thought Jun was just an immature brat. But it seems this kid needs to learn his lesson the hard way. Catching a glimpse of the look on Minato's face, the three boys instinctively huddle together in sheer terror. Suddenly, a massive surge of blue flames erupts from Minato, instantly bathing the entire classroom in an eerie light. Everyone present is frozen in place, unable to take a single step. They have no idea what kind of monster they are dealing with. Minato slowly walks toward Jun, who is shaking violently like he's standing in the dead of winter. Reaching out his hand, Minato's eyes are completely devoid of life. Jun's face contorts in raw panic, his mouth wide open but unable to squeeze out a single scream. What was that noise? Did someone just cast magic in here? A teacher suddenly bursts through the door, drawn by the sound of Jun's explosion. Minato pulls his hand back. When the teacher demands to know what is going on, Minato lets out a soft sigh and puts on his most innocent face. Nothing happened here, sir. Someone outside probably just misfired a spell. But there shouldn't be any magic clubs practicing on the field right now, the teacher replies suspiciously. Minato quickly deflects, saying, maybe someone was just testing their powers. You know how mages love to show off. Then where is all this smoke coming from? The teacher asks, sniffing the burnt air in the room. Minato calmly explains that it must have wafted in from outside. Surprisingly, the teacher buys the excuse, fully believing that a good kid like Minato would never lie to him. But before leaving, the professor gave his students one final warning. I will find the culprit. Mark my words. Everyone, get back to your seats now. Minato happily waved goodbye to the professor, telling himself he would probably have to fake a crime scene to cover this whole thing up. After the professor left, the room fell into a suffocating silence. Jun turned and stormed off, gritting his teeth as he cursed Minato in his head. Minato was also deep in thought. Even if they were just students, how could they possibly stand against monsters with this pathetic level of strength? Even though the natural disasters are over, monsters are still lurking all over the place. So, Minato decided to scout out the area. That night in Old Shibuya, a desolate wasteland that had never been rebuilt, Minato used a magic circle to fly through the sky. He landed on an old, decrepit building to look around. He then picked up the pace, but he could not sense any monsters nearby. Even though everything looked completely ruined, it seemed like the police had already swept the area. Suddenly, Minato sensed a monster presence nearby, along with signs of human life. He immediately bolted toward the source. At that moment, a girl was trembling on the ground. Looming over her was a terrifying two-headed beast, its mouth drooling after starving for years. At the absolute last second, Minato appeared right on time. The monster, which had been just inches away, suddenly roared in pure agony. Minato had summoned countless sharp spikes from the ground, completely impaling its body. Just like that, he easily took down a beast several times his own size. Minato turned his gaze back to the girl on the ground. Her badge showed she was with the magic police. Knowing he should not get too involved, Minato simply told her to be more careful next time. Before she could even say thank you, Minato soared into the air, vanishing as if he were never there. Once the police officer finally got her bearings, she had no idea who her savior was. He looked like a Supreme Mage, but she noticed something strange. Minato had not chanted a single spell. Meanwhile, Minato was gliding through the sky as smooth as water. Covering his face had definitely been the right call. Since he was just a soul occupying Kusanagi Minato's body, he could not afford to draw too much attention. But today, Minato found himself disappointed once again. A magic police officer had almost gotten killed by such a trash monster. The competence of the police had absolutely plummeted. Minato was now certain that humanity today could not even kill a bottom-tier monster. It was not just the students and the police. It seemed like mages in this era were far weaker than they used to be. But Minato was not too upset. In fact, he felt a bit happy knowing his power was still useful. Minato would use his magic to clear out the surrounding monsters. He could not let them harm the innocent people living here. The next day, as scheduled, the students began measuring their magic power. Standing before them was a massive, bulky machine. It was designed to measure both magic capacity and its specific attribute. These were the two most critical stats for anyone aiming to become a professional mage in the future. Minato was dumbfounded. Why has magic regressed so much? Forget the students, but the fact that even the teachers cannot measure a student's magic power themselves is just pathetic. Sensing magic is the absolute foundation of spellcasting. Do they not even know that? Yuika suddenly approached Minato and asked, Do you have a minute? The sight of them talking set the entire classroom whispering. Yuika noted that this was the first time they were having a proper conversation. She introduced herself as the second daughter of the prestigious Mizuha magic family. Yuika Mizuha? Minato stood there, completely lost for the umpteenth time. What the hell is a magic noble? Yuika was shocked that Minato did not know. The Mizuha family was one of the 4 great clans that ruled over the mages. Minato did not know whether to laugh or cry. Back in his day, none of this nonsense existed. He had never even heard the name Mizuha before. On top of that, Yuika's magic capacity was not even that impressive. For a family supposed to be famous among mages, her magic capacity was incredibly underwhelming. Meanwhile, Yuika was still trying to figure out why Minato was acting so strange. She had gone out of her way to talk to him, yet Minato did not show a shred of gratitude. Nearby, Jun was gritting his teeth in jealousy because Yuika had approached Minato first. Minato scratched his head, deciding to play along. So, what does a prestigious young lady from a powerful clan want with someone like me? Yuika seriously wanted to punch Minato in the face, but as a noble, she had to maintain her elegance. Her fake attitude made Minato lose all his patience. Yuika had approached him because yesterday, Minato had walked away completely unscathed after taking Jun's attack head-on. There had to be a reason for that. But just as Yuika managed to utter a few words, the professor announced that it was time for their test. Minato smiled, relieved to have the perfect excuse to get away from this dramatic girl. Yuika felt helpless but did not get angry. After all, she would get to see Minato's true power during the test anyway. Next up was Jun, who strutted forward with absolute confidence and a smug grin on his face. He unleashed his magic, causing the machine to light up brilliantly. Before long, the number on the screen stopped at 1,000. Jun began hooting like a wild chimpanzee. I am absolutely incredible. I'm even stronger than before. Minato stood there, deep in thought. If that pathetic display counted as 1,000, then the grading standards had not changed at all in 50 years. Next up was Yuika, looking just as confident as Jun had. The moment she lightly tapped the machine, the number shot up to 2,000 for the water attribute. The professor gasped in shock and showered them both with praise. Your mana levels are definitely the highest among this year's freshmen. You two will undoubtedly become outstanding mages. The entire class went wild over these 2 rising stars. Only Minato couldn't bring himself to smile. Is Yuika seriously at the top with only 2,000 mana? Compared to amateurs, that's barely any better. Yuika glanced over at Minato, wondering if he felt embarrassed seeing her score. Minato tried to avoid her smug, challenging look. Man, this girl was such a pain. Next up was Minato. The whole class knew he was an academic genius, but when it came to magic, he was always at the bottom of the barrel. That guy Jun still thought Minato was completely useless, even though yesterday he was so terrified he almost wet his pants. Yuika stared intently, keeping her eyes glued to Minato's every step. She was absolutely sure he couldn't beat her. Minato wasn't sure what to do. In his past life, he had stood out way too much, which actually made things pretty lonely. Maybe he should tone it down a bit this time. But thinking about that jerk and that annoying girl looking down on him behind his back, Minato didn't feel like being humble anymore. Minato placed his hand on the machine and unleashed his massive pool of mana, going all out as long as this crappy device could actually handle his full power. His mana surged so violently it leaked right out of the classroom, alerting students in the other buildings. Yuika's eyes widened, completely clueless about what was happening. The numbers on the screen kept climbing without stop, and the stone overflowed with mana, shooting beams of light straight into the air. A bright flash lit up the room, followed by a deafening explosion. Razor-sharp stone fragments flew everywhere, moving fast enough to kill someone. Minato used his magic to shield everyone, making sure no one got hurt. He had only been serious for a few seconds, and this crappy machine already couldn't take it. Besides, nobody here could even sense his mana. Are these kids seriously supposed to become real mages? The professor frantically checked the room to make sure everyone was safe. He even thought Minato was incredibly lucky to have stood at the center of the blast completely unscathed. This is the first time I've ever seen an evaluation device explode like this. Maybe it was already broken, but now, we have no way of knowing your mana level and attribute, Kusanagi. Minato wondered why that even mattered. As it turned out, the academy was dividing the class into groups for practical training, but now they didn't know which group to assign him to. So, the professor ended up placing Minato in Jun's group. Jun glanced at his 2 lackeys, a devious smirk spreading across his face. Of course, Professor. We'd love to have him. The professor, on the other hand, felt completely relieved, handing Minato over to Jun. As Jun walked past Minato, he tried to make a pathetic villain face to scare him. I'm looking forward to it too, Professor. The location for their training turned out to be Old Shibuya. Since monsters still roamed the ruins, Old Shibuya was currently abandoned. Mages and police patrolled the area regularly to keep the beasts from wandering out. That's why the Academy's students were required to participate in these exercises. More than half of the monsters there had already been cleared out by professional mages, so they had nothing to worry about. Minato hadn't expected to have a practical class like this. Well, even as a group, regular students could probably manage to take down a few weaker ones. Minato had actually visited the area the previous night, but something felt off. He was absolutely sure he had wiped out all the monsters here, yet he could still sense a few lingering around. There were no signs of a dungeon break or disaster nearby, so how on earth were they still spawning? His classmates were even placing bets on who could defeat the most monsters today. Minato couldn't help but feel worried for these carefree girls. The professor announced the start of the session. Immediately, Jun shoved Minato against a wall, wearing a smug, arrogant expression. Hey, stay right here and don't get in our way. I'm being nice right now, so don't start whining and begging for help. Got it? Minato brushed the dust off his sleeve. If you don't like me, you could just ignore me. Getting called out like that instantly triggered Jun, and he flew into a rage. Don't talk to me like we're equals, you bottom feeder. You're literal trash, so why the hell is Mizuha interested in you? Minato just stood there, blank-faced. Was this idiot seriously picking a fight with him over a girl? Suddenly it clicked, and Minato asked, "Oh, don't tell me you have a crush on Mizuha?" Jun's eyes bulged with pure rage, but Minato completely ignored him. He had already sensed something approaching. Jun began casting magic again, with his two sidekicks stepping in to back him up. Minato warned him to stop, but Jun assumed he was begging. Minato calmly told him to look behind his back, but Jun yelled, "Do you really think I'll fall for a cheap trick like that?" A massive shadow suddenly loomed over them, causing Jun to instinctively turn around. A giant, two-horned beast had appeared out of nowhere. The three cowards huddled together, trembling in fear. What? Why is it here? Why is there a demon soldier here? Facing a real monster, these three were nothing but helpless weaklings. His two lackeys begged Jun to do something. Though terrified, he tried to act confident. "Take this, you bastard." Jun unleashed a blast of fire, engulfing the demon soldier. Seeing it stand still, he thought he had won. Ha, easy as pie. But no. Once the flames cleared, the demon soldier's body didn't have a single scratch on it. Minato wasn't all that surprised though. How could a mere tier 1 spell bring down a demon soldier anyway? But Minato decided to just stand back and enjoy the show. As the demon soldier marched toward them, Jun got so terrified that his legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the dirt. Tears welled up in his eyes, his teeth chattering so hard he couldn't even squeak, and his crotch was completely soaked. Looks like someone forgot to wear a diaper today. The demon soldier charged at Jun, but stopped dead in its tracks halfway when its eyes fell on Minato. A flood of bloody memories of its slaughtered comrades flashed through its mind. The beast immediately backed away in terror. Minato calmly stepped forward, smirking. Even a brainless demon soldier could tell who the real threat was here. Exactly. It could sense the massive pool of magic radiating from Minato. With its arms trembling, the demon soldier roared and desperately summoned several magic circles. Minato simply raised his hand, effortlessly summoning a magic circle without uttering a single word of a chant. How the hell are you going to beat that thing with a tier 1 spell? We are dead. The lackeys in the back kept whimpering in sheer terror. Right then, the demon soldier unleashed a tier 2 spell, Stone Wall. Massive boulders hurtled straight toward them, and Jun squeezed his eyes shut, too chicken to watch. Minato smirked and cast a simple tier 1 spell, Fire Arrow. But what erupted from his hand was a massive fire tornado, so huge it was obvious it would incinerate the demon's puny rocks in an instant. Sure enough, the boulders were instantly vaporized, and the demon soldier went up in flames right after. A massive explosion triggered a powerful shockwave, making Minato's coat flutter dramatically. Jun slowly opened his eyes, utterly dazed, wondering what the hell had just happened. Did Minato really just take down that demon soldier and save his life? Ignoring the stunned bully, Minato walked over to collect the demon soldier's magic stone. But why was a demon soldier even here in Shibuya? He had hunted down and wiped out every single one of them just yesterday. Yet, here they were again. Unless... This was an omen of a looming disaster. Things were turning out to be much worse than Minato had anticipated. Remembering the tragic deaths from his past life, a cold shiver ran down his spine. But even if that catastrophe struck again, he swore he would save everyone this time. Meanwhile, Jun's two lackeys exchanged dumbfounded glances. Did that guy really just slay a demon soldier? Is he seriously the same weakling Kusanagi we used to know? Jun slammed his fist against the wall in a fit of rage. How could he ever show his face again if Yuika found out about this humiliating moment? Little did he know, Yuika was already hiding behind a nearby boulder, having witnessed every single second of his pathetic, pants-wetting display. Let's rewind a few minutes. In another part of the forest, the other students were busy fighting off magic beasts. Luckily, they were just low-tier beasts, so Yuika easily wiped them out using a basic Tier 1 spell. Seeing her flawless display, the other students cheered in awe. Incredible, as expected of Mizuha. Hearing their constant praise, Yuika let out a helpless sigh. Seriously, they were already dropping their jaws over something this simple? These commoners really knew nothing but how to flatter. But then again, she was an absolute genius, so what could she do? But just then, Yuika caught sight of Jun and his gang dragging Minato into a secluded area. Remembering how badly Minato always got bullied, she couldn't help but knit her brows in concern. Turning to the rest of the class, with that, she dashed after the boys. After all, she just couldn't bring herself to ignore him. Could she? Sneaking behind a corner, Yuika quietly kept an eye on them. But the moment the demon soldier materialized, her heart dropped, and sheer panic washed over her face. There was no way Jun and his lackeys could survive a monster like that. Panic surged through her, and she clenched her fists. She had to do something. As a proud member of the prestigious Mizuha family, she couldn't just stand by. Yuika finally bolted out from her hiding spot, screaming at the top of her lungs. "Everyone, run now!" But before she could even finish her sentence, a blinding beam of magical energy zipped right past her, leaving her completely stunned. With a deafening boom, a massive explosion erupted right in front of her, sending a thick cloud of dust and smoke billowing into the sky. As the haze slowly cleared, the battlefield came back into view. Yuika gaped as she saw Minato standing tall and unharmed amidst the wreckage. She furrowed her brow in utter disbelief. Was that Minato's magic? She remembered him being a timid, shy boy with absolutely zero talent for magic. But right now, he felt like an entirely different person. And she hadn't heard him recite a single word of a chant. Chantless casting? On top of that, he had effortlessly obliterated a demon soldier using nothing but a simple Tier 1 spell. A demon's strength is normally determined by the number of magic stones it possesses. This is what establishes their strict hierarchy. Regular magic beasts are rank 6, while demon soldiers are rank 5, which is one level higher. Demon commanders are rank 4, demon generals are rank 3, and above them, rank 2 belongs to the demon kings. Finally, sitting at the absolute peak, is the demon lord. Because of this hierarchy, the minimum spell tier required to even damage a demon is set in stone. Every modern mage knows that you need at least a Tier 3 spell to take down a demon soldier. So how on earth did Minato pull it off with a mere Tier 1 spell? Yuika's mind was in absolute chaos, but as she stood there frozen in confusion, Minato began slowly walking toward her hiding spot. Gasping, Yuika quickly pressed her back against the rock to stay out of sight, but she immediately caught herself. Wait, why was she even hiding in the first place? Once she figured Minato had walked past, Yuika carefully poked her head out to sneak a glance. Unfortunately for her, Minato had already spotted her. He smirked and scoffed, sneaking around and peeping on people. Is that a hobby of yours? Caught red-handed, Yuika froze. She knit her brows and demanded, "How did you even sense me?" Shrugging his shoulders indifferently, Minato casually replied, "If you call yourself a mage, it would be weirder not to notice." But his vague answer only left Yuika more baffled than before. Seeing her reaction, Minato immediately knew what was up. He let out a helpless sigh and asked, "You guys seriously can't sense magic, can you?" With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Yuika standing there utterly confused. By the time she finally snapped out of it, she had to run to catch up with him. She hurriedly called out, "Wait a minute, what is going on? Explain this to me." But unfortunately, he had already vanished into thin air. There was no one in sight. The guy she was looking for was actually standing on the rooftop of a nearby building. Watching her frantically search for him, Minato couldn't help but sigh. He scanned the surrounding area and muttered to himself, "Well, might as well double-check to be safe." With that, Minato released his mana to scan the area. There weren't any demon soldiers left, but there were still quite a few magic beasts lurking around. The situation was starting to get on his nerves. If even Jun, who was supposedly a top student, was wetting his pants out of fear, the other kids were definitely going to struggle. Minato frowned, thinking it over. Should I give them a hand? If he set up a barrier, it would easily cover the entire Gasibia house. Deciding to act, Minato quickly gathered mana into both hands. In an instant, 2 glowing streams of magic surged forth. They shot up into the air and spread out, quickly enveloping the entire Gasibia estate. Watching the streaks of mana light up the sky, Jun and the others were dumbfounded, having no clue what was happening, and Yuka was just as shocked. She frowned and muttered, "Is that magic? Could it be versatile magic?" Meanwhile, in another corner of the estate, a massive pack of magic beasts had cornered 2 students. There were so many of them that the students were paralyzed with fear. Suddenly, one of the beasts lunged straight at a pink-haired girl. Frozen in absolute terror, she couldn't even bring herself to move. In the nick of time, a sudden beam of mana shot out, tearing the attacking monster to shreds. Having just escaped death's door, the pink-haired girl's legs gave out, and she collapsed to the ground, shaking with fear. The boy rushed over to her side, frantically asking, "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Meanwhile, up on the rooftop, Minato looked down and nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. This is actually pretty fun. But then, he noticed something off about his own mana. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. His mana hadn't just killed the beasts, it had completely shredded them. In an instant, mangled pieces of their bodies were scattered all over the place. Staring at the mess, Minato sighed. Whoops, did I go a little too far? I ended up wiping out almost all of them. How are they supposed to do their training session now? I really need to hold back next time. After a brief silence, Minato used his magic to leap down from the roof. He looked around to make sure the area was clear, finally nodding in approval. This area should be safe now. Once he confirmed everything was clear, Minato landed in a secluded corner. While he wasn't trying to completely hide his abilities, standing out too much would only bring him unwanted attention. Lost in thought, he walked back toward the other students, where the instructor was currently inspecting the remains of a magic beast. After a careful inspection, the instructor muttered in confusion, "How are there still so many beasts here? The whole pack was supposed to be wiped out already. To take out this many monsters with a single strike. Whoever did this must be a top-tier professional mage. And to unleash so many magic projectiles at once without any elemental trace, it has to be non-attribute magic. He had never witnessed anything like it. If not for this mysterious helper, the situation would have completely spiraled out of his control. Firing multiple magic bullets at once is one thing, but there are over 6 impact points here. There is absolutely no way a student could pull this off. As the instructor stood there deep in thought, one of the students couldn't hold back their frustration and complained. Why were there still so many monsters left out here? We almost died, sir. It is my fault, the instructor admitted, not making any excuses as he bowed his head in apology. He pursed his lips and explained, I was told the police had already cleared out the entire pack. I should have double-checked with the academy myself. I am truly sorry for putting you all in such grave danger. Hearing this, the students fell silent, unsure of how to respond. Their expressions softened with a mix of relief and lingering fear. The girl who had just been saved spoke up hesitantly. Sir, someone came and saved us, right? Shaking his head, the instructor replied, I honestly don't know. The girl sighed softly. I see. I just wanted to thank them. The instructor was truly clueless. It certainly wasn't the police, and no professional mages were stationed nearby. Could it have been an unlicensed mage? Regardless of who they were, there was no denying they had saved his students, and he was deeply grateful. He felt a profound sense of gratitude toward this anonymous savior. Meanwhile, Minato, the very anonymous mage the instructor was thinking about, stood in the distance, quietly smiling to himself. Now that the danger had passed, the students finally began to calm down, eagerly whispering about the incredible magic they had just witnessed. Minato scanned the crowd one last time. Seeing that everyone was safe and sound, a wave of relief washed over him. At the exact same time, a hostile glare was burning into him from none other than Jun and his crew. Seriously, these punk kids just barely survived a life-or-death situation, yet they still haven't grown up at all. Minato sighed in frustration. Meanwhile, Yuika was quietly observing him from a distance. He took down a demon soldier using nothing but Tier 1 magic. And that chantless casting, was that really him too? But fire magic and non-attribute magic? She didn't believe any student was skilled enough to wield two magical attributes at once, especially not someone like Minato. Thinking this made Yuika feel a bit more relieved. She was probably just overthinking it. There was no way a guy like him could use two attributes at the same time. The person who cast that attribute magic had to be someone else. Still, that didn't change the fact that Minato had actually defeated a demon soldier on his own. She couldn't help but wonder what he really was. Minato felt Yuika staring at him, but he didn't react at all. Just then, the two guys standing next to June finally snapped out of it. One of them muttered in shock, "Hey, that thing that looked like a laser, was that Kusanagi's doing too?" The other guy immediately shook his head in denial. "No way, that's impossible." But the first guy stood by his theory, quickly adding, "But he's the one who took down the demon soldier." This conversation completely set Jun off, and his face turned dark with pure rage. Gritting his teeth, he snarled, "Hey, shut your damn mouth before I kill you." Sensing the danger, the two guys shut their mouths instantly, too terrified to say another word. With a murderous look in his eyes, Jun fumed. There's no way that worthless piece of trash is that strong. There has to be something shady going on here. Not daring to argue, the other two quickly chimed in. "Yeah, it's definitely weird. Isn't he just a pathetic coward?" Satisfied with their response, Jun scoffed. "That bastard is definitely pulling some kind of trick. How dare he make a fool out of me? I'm going to expose his little tricks." A little while later, the school bell finally rang. Minato was on his way home like any other day when a group of students suddenly blocked his path, catching him off guard. Leading the pack was none other than the bratty Jun. He glared at him and said coldly, "I've been waiting for you." Minato, completely exhausted by these childish punks, let out a deep sigh and said, "Are you guys deaf or what? Instead of running around causing trouble like a bunch of spoiled brats, why don't you use that time to actually study magic? It would be a lot more useful." This completely pushed Jun over the edge. He screamed furiously, "You don't get to talk to me like that, you lying piece of trash." Lying? Minato was slightly confused. What was this guy even talking about? Scoffing, Jun shouted in anger, "Stop playing dumb. How the hell could someone like you use magic like that? You're definitely pulling some cheap tricks behind my back." Minato stared at him, utterly bewildered. He had absolutely no idea what this clown was babbling about. Seeing that Minato didn't reply, Jun coldly ordered, "Come with us. There's no way I'm letting a little rat like you slip away." With that, the other guys stepped up to back him. Talk about cowards who only feel brave in a pack. Minato looked at the group of immature punks in front of him, casually shrugged, and said dismissively, "Why would I even need to run?" Set off by his casual attitude, Jun barked angrily, "Cut the crap, you bastard. You can't even use magic here, can you?" The moment the words left his mouth, he clenched his fist and charged. In an instant, Jun's fist was inches away from Minato's face, but Minato didn't even flinch. The rest of the gang quickly jumped in, throwing punch after punch. Jun laughed arrogantly, sneering, "Without your magic, you're absolutely nothing, are you? Even if you lick my boots right now, I'm not letting you off the hook. Die." The more he talked, the more twisted his grin became. But unfortunately for him, he couldn't even touch a single hair on Minato's head. Minato just stood there calmly, his eyes filled with pure disdain. Their pathetic, amateur swings couldn't even graze him. With his mana automatically shielding him, they could punch him until morning, and he wouldn't feel a thing. Still, these annoying flies were getting on his nerves. Minato figured it would be easier to just play along, so he dropped to the ground, pretending to actually get hit by their punches. But right then, a sharp voice suddenly cut through the air. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" The group startled and quickly looked back, only to see Yuika standing right behind them. Jun's face instantly paled, and his lips trembled as he muttered, "Yuika." Panicked that she would think poorly of him, he quickly tried to explain. "No, it's not what it looks like. We're just messing around." Letting out a cold scoff, Yuika said flatly, "I know exactly what you're doing. You're ganging up to bully Kusanagi." She demanded, "How can you wear the uniform of the Magic Academy and act like a bunch of cheap thugs? Don't you have any shame?" Hearing this, the faces of Jun's crew instantly turned sour. Jun's face darkened with frustration. He glared at Minato, gritting his teeth in silent rage. It was all his fault that Yuika was looking down on him like this. While Jun was still seething, Yuika walked over, grabbed Minato's hand, and said, "Let's get out of here, Kusanagi." Seeing the two of them holding hands sent Jun's anger completely over the edge. Inside, he was cursing Minato's entire family tree. Seeing the sheer fury on Jun's face, his two lackeys froze in terror, not daring to step in and calm him down. Finally, Jun snapped and lost his mind right on the spot. Damn you, Kusanagi. Meanwhile, Minato could only let out a helpless sigh. Is this guy like superglue or what? He just won't let it go. Fuming with rage, Jun began summoning magic in his hands. He roared like a madman. You miserable bastard, I am absolutely going to destroy you. Seeing this, Yuika panicked and screamed, Tadano, what on earth are you doing? But he had already lost his mind. Together with his lackeys, they launched their magical attacks straight at Minato. Feeling the impending danger, Yuika frantically screamed out, Watch out! It's dangerous! A massive explosion erupted right in front of them, sending thick smoke and fire billowing into the air, forcing Yuika to shield her eyes. Believing Minato had been vaporized in the flames, Jun burst into a smug laugh. You could cheat 10 more times and it still won't save you, loser. But his two lackeys were singing a different tune. Terrified, they started panicking and muttering, Oh my god, this is bad. Is he actually dead? Snorting in disdain, Jun dismissed their worries. You idiots, what are you so freaked out about? We just accidentally cast magic off campus and lost control a bit, that's all. Kusanagi just happened to stand in the line of fire. Simple as that. But just as he was basking in his glory, a calm, deep voice cut through the smoke and dust. You guys crossed the line. Startled, Jun whipped his head around, only to see a figure slowly walking out of the thick smoke. Minato stood there completely unscathed. Glaring at the brat in front of him, he said coldly, I thought you were just a bunch of immature kids, so I was going to let it slide. But I guess stupidity really does carry a deadly price. It is time I teach you boys a lesson. Hearing this, Jun's face instantly went pale with shock. He cried out in pure terror. How are you still alive? You took all those magical attacks head on. Behind them, Yuika was just as stunned, her mind completely blank. Minato didn't even bother to explain. He coldly said, If you had only targeted me, I might have let it go. But dragging Yuika into this? You're completely rotten to the core, kid. Biting his lip in frustration, Jun refused to back down and screamed, No, both of you are the ones at fault here. How dare you make a fool out of me? We're going to blast you both until there's nothing left but your bones. The moment the words left his mouth, magic began to swirl in his hands once again. Unfazed, Minato calmly snapped his fingers, summoning only a tiny speck of magic. Spotting the miniature magic circle, Jun burst into a mocking laugh. Haha, what kind of pathetic spell is that? You're bringing a butter knife to a gunfight. You're dead meat. Without wasting a second, the trio unleashed another volley of attacks. But Minato remained completely calm, quietly whispering, Mana Drain. As soon as the words left his mouth, thick vines wrapped in magical energy erupted from the ground. Like giant pythons, the vines writhed through the air, shooting straight toward Jun and his gang. Before they could even react, the vines wrapped around them in a tight grip, causing them to shriek in terror. What the hell is this? Let go of me. But within seconds, they looked like deflated balloons, collapsing to the ground with absolutely no strength left. Seeing this, Minato retracted his vines. With nothing left to hold them up, Jun and his cronies fell flat on their faces. Minato was actually a bit surprised. He had only drained a tiny fraction of their mana, and they were already completely wiped out? Well, I guess this should be enough to teach them a lesson. Witnessing the entire scene, Yuika's jaw dropped. What kind of magic was that? What on earth just happened? How did Jun and his guys get knocked out so easily? While she was lost in thought, Minato grabbed his bag, getting ready to leave. Seeing him walk away, Yuika quickly ran after him and shouted, Hey, wait a minute. She immediately began bombarding him with questions. What kind of magic was that? What just happened? There's no way you should be able to use magic like that. Yuika kept badgering him like she was running a police interrogation, which Minato found incredibly annoying. He let out a cold sigh. Instead of bombarding me with questions, don't you think you owe me something else first? Realizing what he meant, Yuika stubbornly looked away. Fine, I'll give you some credit since you just saved me. Thank you. There, happy? Now answer my question. But before she could even finish her sentence, Minato had vanished into thin air. Annoyed, Yuika stomped her foot. Where did he go now? Seriously. By nightfall, the ruins of old Shibuya were pitch black. Across the gloomy night sky, a shadowy figure glided through the air like the wind. He gracefully touched down on the rooftop of a skyscraper. This mysterious figure was none other than Minato. He was in disguise, wearing his signature black hoodie. Feeling a wave of unease, Minato cast a detection spell to scan the area, just as he suspected. Even though he had cleared out all the monsters earlier this afternoon, the area was already crawling with them again. Was this a bad omen? If it was just Shibuya, Minato could easily handle it on his own, but he could feel their dark presences echoing in other parts of the city as well. This was definitely way too much for the police to handle. Even though the magic police were pretty incompetent, Minato couldn't take on every single monster in Japan by himself. He needed to come up with a real game plan, and fast. After thinking it over for a bit, Minato decided to take out the monsters around here first. He had to be careful not to stand out. With that in mind, Minato used his magic to leap down, immediately going to work on those magical beasts. Furious bolts of magic rained down from the sky, dropping the beasts like flies. Right at that moment, a drunk guy was stumbling his way down the street below. Completely oblivious, he didn't notice the beast creeping up right behind him. In an instant, the monster lunged at the man. Just in the nick of time, Minato appeared and slashed it dead, moving as fast as the wind. Feeling something breeze past him, the drunk guy spun around to look. But there was absolutely no one there. Thinking he was just hallucinating, he shrugged it off, not knowing Minato had already ducked out of sight. The drunk man just kept on stumbling back home. Once Minato made sure he was safe, he finally left the area. However, he didn't realize someone had captured the whole thing on video from afar. The guy immediately posted it on social media, wearing a smug grin. If this doesn't go viral, nothing will. The next morning, in the headmaster's office at the Magic Academy, another teacher was also present. He looked down at the students standing before him and spoke in a low, serious voice. We received a report that some students were seen using magic outside of the school grounds. If this is true, the school will have no choice but to suspend them. And the students they're referring to are Minato and Yuika. Jun and his lackeys had also been summoned, so the moment Jun heard this, he immediately tried to shift the blame. What do you mean by that, sir? We didn't use any magic. It was Kusanagi who came looking for trouble with us. Minato was completely speechless at his sheer shamelessness. This guy is lying through his teeth without even blinking. How pathetic. Minato realized he couldn't just stay quiet anymore. Even though he was dragged into this, he still had to clear his name. But before Minato could even open his mouth, a loud voice rang out. That's a lie. The shout startled both him and Jun's crew. The person who spoke up was none other than Yuika. She pointed an angry finger right at Jun and lashed out. Kusanagi was the one being bullied by Tadano and his friends. Tadano's side used magic first. Hearing this, the teacher frowned and asked, "So does that mean Kusanagi also used magic?" Yuika fired back defensively. It was self-defense. He didn't do anything wrong. Minato was actually a bit surprised this girl had a strong sense of justice, and she wasn't lying about a single thing. But Jun's face was 8 times thicker than a concrete wall. Even after being called out, he still stubbornly denied it. We didn't do anything wrong either. Yuika got even more annoyed and snapped. Oh, shut your mouth. What kind of person bullies someone and then blames everything on them? Do you have no shame at all? Getting yelled at only made Jun argue back even harder. Kusanagi doesn't deserve to be here. I was just taking out the trash. Yuika glared at him, her face filled with utter disgust. You're the one who doesn't deserve to be here. Refusing to back down, Jun protested. I'm at the top of the class. I'm the only one who can actually stand on the same level as you. Not some pathetic loser like Kusanagi. Yuika had heard enough of his garbage and yelled in frustration. You're completely delusional. Jun still wouldn't give up. He stepped right up to Yuika and said with absolute certainty, Open your eyes. Stop sticking up for that garbage. Look at me instead. Be my woman. As Jun said this, his eyes were filled with desperate sincerity. Too bad for him. Yuika couldn't care less about his so-called sincerity. She scoffed in disdain and said, In your dreams, kid. In an instant, Jun felt like he'd been thrown into an ice cave, completely frozen solid. But she wasn't done yet. Yuika went on to lay out exactly why she was rejecting him, calling him a bully and criticizing his violent attitude. She roasted him so hard he looked like he might actually faint from sheer rage. Watching this unfold, Minato couldn't help but feel a bit bad. Even though Jun totally deserved it, that was just brutal. Right then, the headmaster spoke up. It seems this incident was indeed the fault of Tadano and his friends, and Kusanagi was merely acting in self-defense. We do not tolerate those who use magic to settle personal grudges. You are all expelled. Hearing this, Jun's 2 lackeys panicked and pleaded, No, please. We were just following June's orders. The headmaster didn't want to hear it and dismissed Minato and Yuika back to class. The two immediately agreed and left the office. Even after leaving the room, Yuika was still fuming, muttering angrily, "Ugh, that guy. It's been a long time since anyone made me this mad." Walking beside her, Minato asked curiously, "So, what happens to them now that they've been expelled?" Yuika pouted slightly and said in a careless tone, "They won't be able to become mages anymore, obviously." With that, Yuika suddenly spun around to glare at Minato and snapped, "And you need to start standing up for yourself." Minato felt a bit helpless. He was actually planning to do just that, but she had already handled it for him. Seeing him stay quiet, Yuika suddenly looked a bit flustered. Minato furrowed his brows and thought for a long moment before quietly speaking up. "Come to think of it, how many times have you tried to save me now?" Back in class, when Minato got dragged into a fight, Yuika had stood up to help him, and now this time, she even stepped forward to testify for him. Thinking about this, Minato smiled at her and said, "You're really kind, you know that?" Minato's words caught Yuika completely off guard. She blushed bright red and hurried off, snapping, "Shut up, I'm leaving." Minato watched her walk away with a slight smirk, thinking, how cute. Right then, he remembered something important. The original Kusanagi Minato was dead, and he was the reincarnated Ichikami Minato. Was that poor kid bullied to death, or was it just a normal car accident? Minato didn't know, but those bullies were definitely guilty. He hoped karma would make them pay. Meanwhile, two more students appeared in the principal's office, accompanied by a girl's sweet, clear voice. So, a student used magic outside school grounds, and several other students got caught up in it. The principal nodded slightly and replied, "That's correct, but luckily, no civilians were harmed." Hearing this, the girl asked in confusion, "Then why did you call me here, sir?" The principal calmly replied, "The student caught up in it was Yuika Mizuha." His words made the girl freeze. After a brief silence, she spoke up. "I see. Thank you for telling me, sir." With that, she turned around to leave. The principal didn't stop her, casually adding, "Please give your father my regards." Without even looking back, she calmly replied, "Don't worry, sir. My father will keep investing in the academy." As the two of them walked out into the hallway, the boy beside her finally spoke up. If what the principal said is true, then this Kusanagi guy must be insanely strong. The girl muttered in a low voice, "Taking on multiple mages at once is almost impossible. You can't win unless there's an overwhelming difference in power. Do you think he's stronger than us?" The two of them continued chatting as they walked. As they passed by the classrooms, other students turned their heads, staring at them with pure admiration. But they couldn't care less. The girl's voice suddenly turned dead serious. "First, I need to verify this Kusanagi Minato's abilities. Then, I'll decide whether to withdraw my little sister from this school." This girl was Yuika Mizuha's older sister, a third-year student in S-class. The boy beside her was Ryuji Katsuragi, also an S-class third year. Hearing her words, he smirked and replied, "Sounds like a plan." Inside the classroom, Minato was slumped over his desk, letting out a heavy sigh. Now that everything had settled down, he had absolutely no motivation. Just then, the excited chatter of some nearby students caught his attention. "Look at that, so cool. Is that a dark mage? I know him." Minato frowned, wondering to himself, are dark mages really those prestigious lone mages? But then again, it had absolutely nothing to do with him. He let out another frustrated sigh, but as Minato was wallowing in his boredom, the teacher walked in and called out, "Hey, Kusanagi!" And just like that, Minato and a few other students followed the instructor to the testing room. The students who hadn't been tested last time were up now. Yuika was also there, narrowing her eyes as she stared at Minato. This time, she was determined to find out his real abilities. But suddenly, her eyes widened in shock. Because she saw both Ruka and Ryuji standing there, a look of anxiety flashed in Yuika's eyes. What is my sister doing here? No matter what, the evaluation had to begin. After a short while, it was finally Minato's turn. Minato hesitated in front of the magic measurement device, deep in thought. Last time, he ended up blowing the machine up, so he definitely needed to hold back a bit. With that in mind, Minato gathered only a tiny amount of mana into his palm, and slowly placed his hand on the testing device. Controlling his mana at such a ridiculously low level made him break a sweat. The numbers on the display started ticking up rapidly. Moments later, Minato pulled his hand back, resting them on his knees as he panted heavily. The instructor asked in concern, "Hey, are you okay?" He shook his head slightly to show he was fine. The instructor glanced at the final reading on the device and said hesitantly, "Well, looks like we have the final result. Kusanagi Minato's attribute is none." Hearing the result, Yuika's eyes filled with disbelief. Ruka and Ryuji, on the other hand, didn't seem surprised at all. It seemed they truly believed Minato wasn't that strong. But the real shocker came next. When Minato's mana capacity registered at a mere 100, the surrounding students immediately broke into whispers. "For our year, that's literally the absolute lowest, right? But having no attribute at all is pretty rare, isn't it?" Ryuji heard the students gossiping and couldn't help but sigh. Ruka grew impatient and turned on her heel. "Let's go, we're done here." As the two left, the crowd immediately burst into jeers. "He's already out of breath, just from a simple reevaluation? Well, what do you expect from someone with trash magic?" Worried that Minato might be discouraged, the instructor walked over and patted his shoulder. "Don't let it get to you, Kusanagi. Your mana level doesn't define who you are." The only one who didn't buy the results was Yuika. Something is definitely off, she thought. Minato was easily strong enough to take down demon soldiers. He should have been able to use both fire and null magic. She had never even heard of someone being able to suppress their own magic output. What on earth did Minato just do? In stark contrast to everyone else, Minato was incredibly pleased with himself. That went perfectly. Just as he planned, all he had to do was precisely control a tiny fraction of his mana, and it worked like a charm. "Man, I am absolutely exhausted, but thank goodness I managed to fool everyone." A moment later, out in the hallway, Minato was walking side by side with Yuika. As they walked, he asked, "So, you were at the evaluation too?" Mizuha Yuika nodded slightly and replied, "I was just a little curious." But before long, someone blocked their path. It was Ruka and Ryuji. Minato did not recognize them. Confused, he mumbled, "Who are you?" Ruka immediately introduced herself. "I am the eldest daughter of the Mizuha family, Ruka. And this is Katsuragi Ryuji. We are both third years." Hearing this, Minato frowned in confusion and asked hesitantly, "So, what do you guys want?" "I have absolutely no interest in you anymore," Ruka scoffed coldly, stepping forward. Seeing this, Yuika immediately grew anxious, her body reflexively trembling. In no time, Ruka was standing right in front of Yuika. She said coldly, "It looks like you are nothing compared to those rule breakers, huh?" Yuika lowered her head slightly, not daring to look her sister in the eye. Ruka would not let it go that easily. She pressed further, "I also heard you were saved by some guy whose magic power could barely even reach 100. Is that true?" Yuika hesitated for a moment. After a long pause, she replied in a low voice, "Yes, that is true." Hearing this confirmation, Ruka immediately yelled, "Drop out, Yuika!" Indignant, Yuika asked in protest, "Why should I do that?" Scoffing softly, Ruka said coldly, "Have you ever beaten me? Even just once?" Yuika was stunned. Ruka was right. Whether it was academics, sports, martial arts, or even using magic, Yuika had never surpassed her older sister. Step by step, Ruka closed in on Yuika and said sternly, "You are not cut out to be a mage. Having just me is enough." The more Yuika heard, the worse her expression became. She wanted to fight back, but she could not find the words. Ruka still refused to back down and kept demanding, "All you need to do is listen to me. Leave this place and just find some random school to go to." Yuika trembled slightly, her eyes welling up with tears. She clearly wanted to protest, but she just did not have the courage. Seeing her silence, Ruka snapped back. "Do you understand?" Yuika clenched her hands into fists, fighting an internal battle. After a moment, she gave up. She was about to agree, but before she could finish her sentence, Minato cut in. "That is a bit too rude, don't you think?" Ruka glared at him and asked coldly, "What did you just say?" Minato was not scared at all. He said calmly, "You just keep talking and talking without even bothering to listen to what the other person wants to say. If that is not rude, then I don't know what is." Ruka scoffed coldly and said flatly, "This is a private family matter. An outsider like you should keep your nose out of it." Minato smirked and said, "You call that a conversation? You are just barking orders at your little sister." These words infuriated Ruka, and she yelled out in anger, "What did you just say, you brat?" Minato calmly faced her and said casually, "Forcing someone to do something against their will is a major taboo. It is basically the same as telling them to give up on their dreams." Ruka still did not see anything wrong with her behavior. She scoffed and said, My little sister does not have what it takes to be a mage. She has not beaten me even once. Yuika stood there, her face filled with sorrow. Just as Ruka said, she really was nothing. For a long time, she had deluded herself into thinking she was a genius and had what it takes to become one, even though she had never bested her older sister even once. But just as Yuika was falling into despair, Minato spoke up with absolute confidence. She can beat you. These words stunned Ruka, and she stared at him in disbelief. Ruka could not believe her ears. She frowned and muttered, "Beat me?" Chuckling, Minato casually continued, "Of course, not right now." Ruka glared at him, curling her lip in disdain. "At least you are realistic. Then how about a 2-on-2 mock battle in 2 weeks? Hearing this, Minato could not help but ask in confusion, "A 2-on-2? Thinking he was scared, Ruka mocked him, spouting all that nonsense just a minute ago, and now you are turning tail and running? Smirking coldly, Minato retorted, "No way. I am in for this battle, senior. What about you?" With that, he glanced at Yuika standing beside him. Stunned by the proposal, Yuika hesitated for a long time, unable to answer. Yuika was fighting an internal battle over whether she should give up on her dream or stand up and fight just once. After a long silence, she finally had her answer. She declared fiercely, "I will join too." Minato smiled with satisfaction. "Then it is settled." He glanced at Ruka and smirked. "If we win, you can never bring this up again." Ruka casually accepted and countered, "If we win, Yuika has to leave, and I will not hold back. You two better get ready for a reality check." Saying that, she turned around and left. Ryuji quickly followed. But before leaving, he gave them a friendly wave. A little later, on the rooftop of the academy building, Minato and Yuika were standing there. Suddenly, Yuika spoke up, "Kusanagi, I need a favor. Please, I'm begging you. Teach me magic." Hearing those words, Minato finally let out a sigh of relief. He had been wondering why she suddenly called him up to the rooftop in the first place. After a brief pause, Minato finally spoke. "I'm just a weak mage with a mana capacity of barely 100. Are you sure you want someone like me tutoring you?" Giving a firm nod, Yuika said determinedly, "I know you're hiding your true power. You're definitely way stronger than me." Minato was a bit surprised by her words, but she just kept going. "You must know some way to get stronger, which is why you said I could beat her, right?" Minato let out a helpless sigh. Seriously, these people always jump to their own conclusions. That was exactly why he suggested a practice match, but he couldn't just spell it out for her. Seeing him stay silent, Yuika immediately bowed and pleaded, "Please." Minato had no choice but to agree. Hearing this, Yuika instantly cheered up and exclaimed, "Are you serious?" Minato nodded slightly and gave her a warning. "But you have to do exactly as I say, and no quitting halfway through." Yuika agreed without a second thought. "Deal, of course I won't." Looking at her reaction, Minato couldn't help but smile. With her begging like that, who could possibly say no? Besides, she'd better prepare herself for what was coming. Teaching a mage shouldn't be too bad, right? With that thought, Minato slowly spoke up. "All right, we're starting today. As for where we'll practice," before he could even finish, Yuika hesitantly suggested, "How about my place?" So that afternoon, Yuika took Minato to her place, which turned out to be a massive estate. The moment they arrived, Minato couldn't help but marvel. "Wow, this mansion is huge." Yuika didn't think it was a big deal and casually said, "My dad is a noble mage, so this is pretty normal." Actually, this was the very first time she had ever invited a guy over to her house. She couldn't help but wonder if Minato felt awkward about it. Not that she had any weird intentions or anything, but the more she thought about it, the more embarrassed she got, unable to look Minato in the eye. Just then, Minato spoke up, "Let's get started, Yuika." Hearing him use her first name, Yuika flusteredly squealed. "Wait, why are you calling me by my first name?" Minato didn't see the issue and casually replied, "Well, your sister is also a Mizuha, so how else am I supposed to tell you two apart?" Hearing this, Yuika realized she was totally overthinking it. Noticing her reaction, Minato asked, "If you don't like it, what do you want me to call you?" Yuika shook her head slightly. "No, it's fine. Just call me Yuika." Since there was no issue, Minato got down to business. "All right, let's begin. First, let me ask you, what exactly is mana?" Hearing the question, Yuika confidently replied, "That's easy. It's the energy inside the body, the foundation for creating magic." Without saying if she was right or wrong, Minato pressed on. "And what about spells?" Yuika calmly answered. They're like a program that converts mana into magic. Minato asked once more. Then, can you increase your mana capacity? Yuika confidently shook her head. No way. A mage's maximum mana is predetermined at birth. Once you reach a certain age, your mana pool stops growing. Having finished her answers, she smirked and said, Hee hee. Well, pretty perfect answers, right? Every single one is dead wrong. Minato let out a soft snort and said coldly. Yuika instantly stared at him in utter disbelief. Minato sighed in disbelief. How can modern mages be this clueless? Just what on earth happened over the last 50 years? Left with no choice, he patiently explained. First of all, mana doesn't just exist inside your body. It's all around us. Spells are nothing more than a tool to assist your magic. And yes, you absolutely can actively increase your mana capacity. Yuika gasped in shock. That's impossible. If that were true, wouldn't all the magic academies be completely pointless? Shrugging indifferently, Minato said coldly, It doesn't matter if you believe me right now. I'm just going to teach you those 3 things I mentioned. Take a seat. Yuika did as she was told and sat cross-legged on the floor. Minato calmly spoke up. I'm going to channel some mana into you. Let me know the moment you feel it. Yuika asked skeptically. Wait, you can actually sense mana? Minato flatly replied. If you can't even do that, you'll never get stronger. Close your eyes. Here we go. Right as he said that, Minato placed his hand on Yuika's back and began channeling mana into her body. But when Yuika showed absolutely no reaction, Minato pushed even more mana into her. Just as he started thinking she still couldn't feel a thing, she suddenly shrieked, My back is getting hot! I can feel something! Minato immediately pulled his hand back and sighed. That was just the most basic way to sense mana. Yuika stared at him, murmuring in confusion. So this is what you meant by sensing mana? Nodding casually, Minato replied. Exactly. You need to remember this feeling. Once you can feel it, you'll be able to recognize it and find the mana sources in nature. Make that your goal. Winking with a grin, Yuika said, Hee, I'm a daughter of the Mizuha family after all. I'll get the hang of it in no time, just watch me. Minato rolled his eyes in disbelief. It took pouring that much mana into her for her to finally notice it. It really looked like Dua had absolutely zero talent for magic. 1 week later, back at Dua's villa, exactly as Minato expected, she was screaming in pure frustration. I can't do this. Minato could only sigh in defeat. It had been a whole week of intense lessons, but man, this girl was a seriously slow learner. But ready or not, the competition was just around the corner. With no other choice, he offered, All right, let me transfer some of my mana to you one more time. Before she could even reply, Minato placed his hand on Dua's back, sending his mana flowing directly into her body. After a brief moment, Minato whispered, Okay, open your eyes. Dua slowly opened them, and instantly, her face lit up with sheer shock. She gasped in excitement. I can see it. Oh my god, so this is what mana actually looks like. Staring at the glowing energy swirling around her hands, she was completely mesmerized. This is incredible. I'm actually seeing real magic. But wait, if she could see her own, she should be able to see Minato's too, right? Curious, Dua glanced over at him, but to her absolute bewilderment, she saw absolutely nothing. Completely unaware of her thoughts, Minato smiled and praised her. Hey, not bad, good job. Hearing the compliment, Dua smugly smirked. Please, that was nothing. Minato just shrugged and said, Well, now that you can finally sense mana, it's time to learn how to control it. He instructed her to channel just the right amount of energy, cutting out all the useless flair to focus purely on efficiency. He wanted her to push her mana to its absolute limit. Once your mana completely drains and recovers, your overall capacity will actually grow. Minato explained that now that she could sense mana, she could push her reserves to the maximum. Dua listened, her jaw dropping further with every word. Seeing her stunned expression, Minato sighed. What? Is this different from the textbook stuff they teach at school? Look, if you don't believe me, that's fine. No, I believe you, Dua interrupted him, her eyes full of determination. I don't have a single doubt about you anymore. A grin slipped onto Minato's face. All right then, let's move on to the next phase. Take a few steps back, Dua. We're doing real combat training. Saying that, he whipped off his coat and tossed it to the ground. Dua smirked, fired up for a challenge. Bring it on. I've been dying to see what you can really do anyway. With a quick chant, she summoned her magic, a tier 1 water wave spell. A violent, rushing wave of water surged directly at Minato. But with a lazy flick of his wrist, a glowing barrier materialized, effortlessly stopping the massive wave dead in its tracks. Dua gasped in shock. No way, he blocked it just like that? Minato looked at her calmly and said, "This is just a tier 1 non-elemental barrier. If you can't even crack this, you can forget about ever scratching me." Biting her lip in frustration, Dua cast another spell, launching a barrage of ice bullets straight at him. But Minato didn't even flinch. The barrier easily absorbed every single hit. Minato gave her a calm pointer. You need to keep moving while casting. Standing still against another mage is basically a death sentence. Stung by his criticism, Dua snapped and unleashed spell after spell. But before long, her mana ran completely dry, leaving her collapsed flat on the ground, panting. Minato walked over, sitting down right next to her. He let out a soft sigh and said, "You're wasting way too much mana on useless movements. If you can control your mana flow perfectly, you don't even need to chant anymore. You can cast spells instantly, as long as you have the energy. Watch this." Minato raised his hand and cast a spell instantly. A small fireball shot toward a straw dummy, hitting it with a soft thud, leaving it completely unscathed. He calmly explained, "Now, that represents your magic." Then, Minato gathered a bit more mana into his palm. He shot another fireball, same spell, but this one erupted into a blazing inferno, completely incinerating the dummy. "And this is mine," Minato said. Dua stared at the ashes for a moment before she finally muttered, "So, my mana is just getting scattered?" Minato nodded slightly and replied, "Exactly. You can cast spells instantly without a single chant, as long as you can control your mana." Dua frowned, processing this. "So, no more chanting at all?" "Pretty much," Minato replied. "But for now, let's start by learning how to shorten your chants. Once you've fully mastered your mana control, you can drop the chanting altogether. Shortening your chants gives you a massive advantage in real combat, plus you won't be wasting mana on useless words." Hearing this, Dua murmured, "So, it basically makes my spells punch way harder." "Spot on," Minato nodded in agreement. "All right, let's go again." Dua panicked. "Wait, already?" Minato gave her a playful wink and laughed. "No pain, no gain. You need to train like your life literally depends on it." Hearing that, Dua suddenly got a very bad feeling about this. A few hours later, she was completely wiped out, collapsed flat on her back. Minato looked down at her, teasing, "You still breathing? Just so you know, this is going to be your daily routine from now on." Later that night, Minato took his usual stroll through the city, heading toward Harajuku. He extended his mana to scan the area, and just as he expected, the place was absolutely crawling with monsters. No matter how many of these things he wiped out, their numbers just wouldn't drop. What the hell was going on here? But right then, his senses tingled. In a dark alley nearby, a little kid was cornered by a beast. Without wasting a single second, Minato rushed over and instantly obliterated the monster. That magic beast. Minato glanced at the child and asked with concern, "Hey, are you okay?" But the kid did not say a word, raising a camera to snap a photo of him. Unfortunately, Minato was one step ahead, using magic to vanish in the blink of an eye. Once he was safe, Minato finally let out a sigh of relief, muttering about how they just shamelessly snapped photos of him without even saying thank you. What is wrong with people? I seriously need to get a mask for next time. With that, he turned around and headed back home. The next afternoon, after school, Minato and Yuika returned to the villa. The two of them continued their training, and as usual, Yuika was the first to collapse. She lay on the ground, gasping heavily for breath, while Minato stood beside her, feeling completely helpless. There were only a few days left until the mock battle. She was definitely making progress, but she still could not compare to Ruka in any aspect. There was no way Yuika would have a chance of winning if things kept going like this. With that thought, he suddenly spoke up, saying, "You know, sometimes giving up is also an option." Hearing those words, Yuika hung her head low, but she quickly stood back up and muttered, "I am always being compared to my older sister. I can never beat her at anything. I have already been forced to give up so many things in my life, but magic is the one thing I refuse to give up." Minato narrowed his eyes at her and spoke without any hesitation. "But like this, you will never win," Yuika resolutely demanded. "Then train me harder." Smiling despite himself, Minato raised an eyebrow and said, "I won't go easy on you. That is exactly what I want to hear." Yuika replied excitedly, She was definitely not giving up. After that, Minato coached Yuika even more, and the two of them kept sparring continuously. They only stopped when Yuika was completely out of breath. A few days later, Yuika was finally able to hold her ground for a long time, much to Minato's satisfaction. Smiling, he said, "You passed." Hearing those words, Yuika cheered happily, thrilled that she had finally done it. Minato also praised her performance. "Great job, Yuika." Getting praised made her feel incredibly proud. All of her hard work had finally paid off. A few days later, the day of the mock battle finally arrived. Minato and Yuika stood outside the training grounds, but as soon as they stepped inside, the scene shocked them both. The training grounds were absolutely packed with a massive crowd. The moment the reporters saw Yuika, they rushed over to shove their microphones in her face. They started firing questions rapidly, leaving Yuika completely stunned and bewildered, with no idea what was going on. Minato frowned slightly at the sight. All of this just for a match between students? I guess that shows just how important noble magic bloodlines really are. Besides the reporters, a massive crowd of students had also gathered to watch. Seeing this, Minato could not help but comment, "Don't you think this is a bit too much?" Magic battles were apparently so rare that this felt like a major event. But after speaking, Minato received no response. He turned around to look, only to find Yuika huddling nervously in a corner. Just then, a loud announcement echoed from a distance, calling for the two competitors to enter the arena. Yuika immediately jumped up in surprise. As she was about to rush off, Minato noticed she was not in the right state of mind and quickly called her back. Yuika, shaking with anxiety, looked at him in confusion. "What's wrong?" Minato smiled at her warmly and cheered, "Go get him." Hearing his words, Yuika suddenly froze. Then, a smile broke across her face, and that confident look slowly returned. She firmly replied, "You bet." Right after that, she turned and headed toward the arena. As she walked, she could not help but think about how mysterious Minato really was. His words kept echoing in her chest. Soon, Yuika was standing right in front of Ruka. Ruka narrowed her eyes and spoke in a cold, serious tone. "So you didn't run away?" "Of course not," Yuika confidently replied. Letting out a soft scoff, Ruka pouted with utter disdain. "How pathetic. Do you honestly think you stand a chance against someone like me?" With that, she raised her eyebrows, looking down at Yuika with absolute confidence. She seemed completely sure of her victory, but Yuika did not back down, fiercely shouting back, "I am definitely going to win." Hearing this, Ruka clicked her tongue and muttered, "Well, it looks like you've actually made some progress over the last 2 weeks. Yuika knew. She knew her older sister was incredibly strong. The gap in their power was indeed massive, but Yuika refused to lose. Just then, the announcer called out, "Let the match begin." In an instant, the two Mizuha sisters braced themselves for combat. Yuika was the first to cast her magic. She shortened her incantation to save her mana. At the same time, Ruka did not just stand there. She conjured her magic as well. Minato, watching from the sidelines, analyzed the situation. He could not help but evaluate. Ruka clearly knew the basics of a duel between two mages, whereas Yuika was far too nervous. Because she forgot to move, she completely lost the advantage of her quick casting. Just as he predicted, Ruka closed the distance in the blink of an eye, right in front of Yuika. Both of them launched level 1 water magic, causing 2 surging waves to violently collide in an instant. However, because of her weaker mana, Yuika's wave of water was quickly shattered, leaving her wide open to Ruka's attack. However, she somehow managed to block it. Ruka could not hide her shock, wondering how she had managed to neutralize the attack. Even Ruka could not help but admit, "I can't believe you've actually gotten stronger in just 2 weeks." Hearing those words, Yuika was immediately thrilled, since this was the very first time her sister had ever praised her. Seeing her reaction, Ruka asked in annoyance, "What are you so happy about?" "Huh? That was just a simple comparison. I wasn't praising you." As she spoke, Ruka's gaze grew even more determined. She spoke in a cold tone. "Now, I'll raise my magic level." With that, she summoned her water waves once again. Yuika didn't dare lower her guard, hurriedly summoning her defensive magic. In the blink of an eye, level 2 water magic appeared. It danced wildly in the air, splitting into tiny water bubbles, and then furiously charged toward Yuika. Yuika couldn't hold it off, and was sent flying by the bubbles. Her body fell like a broken kite, landing right at Minato's feet. Glancing at Yuika, Minato couldn't help but feel helpless. When it came to chanting speed, her opponent was simply on another level. While he was lost in thought, Ruka walked over from a distance and said coldly, "Pretty brutal, isn't it? Aren't you going to help her? You protected her before, didn't you?" "No need," Minato replied without a second thought, leaving Ruka staring in utter shock. Right at that moment, Yuika struggled to her feet, though her body was still shaking uncontrollably. Ruka was even more shocked, crying out in disbelief, "How is this possible? I attacked you with level 2 magic. How are you still standing?" Biting her lip hard, Yuika said with determination, "I won't lose. Magic is the only thing I have. Even if I lose everything, I will never give up." As soon as she finished speaking, Yuika summoned her magic once again. Ruka snorted coldly and quickly summoned her own magic to defend. In an instant, the two water spells clashed fiercely, but very quickly, Yuika began to weaken. She kept repeating the same words, "I will definitely win, I won't give up," before collapsing helplessly to the ground. And just like that, the outcome of the battle was decided. Yuika had completely run out of mana, and the victory went to Ruka. Shaking as she lay on the ground, Yuika clenched her fists and muttered in frustration, "I couldn't do anything. Absolutely nothing." Minato sighed helplessly and walked over to help Yuika up. This was a battle of magical control, but she ultimately lost due to her lack of mana capacity. Right then, Ruka spoke up indifferently. "Do you get it now? That girl has zero talent." "Kusanagi, you must be thinking the same thing, right?" Minato replied nonchalantly. "It's true that she doesn't have talent. Yuika is clumsy, her progress is incredibly slow, she's incompetent, and she's even weaker in actual combat. But there is one thing I really like about her: she works incredibly hard and trains like a complete fool." Hearing this, Yuika looked up at him in surprise. Ruka, on the other hand, couldn't care less and pouted, and this is the result. But before she could finish, Minato coldly cut her off. "She lost, yes. But I like hard-working people, like Yuika." These words moved Yuika to tears. This was the first time anyone had ever acknowledged her hard work. Minato paid no attention and continued, "Yuika is my student. It really pisses me off when you trash-talk her." The more Yuika listened, the more emotional she became, tears streaming down her face. Ruka snorted coldly and said with utter contempt, "A guy with a mana level of only 100 is acting pretty smug, don't you think?" Shrugging nonchalantly, Minato said with confidence, "And that guy with 100 mana is going to beat you." Infuriated by his words, a look of annoyance flashed across Ruka's face. She snorted coldly and said, "You sure talk big. Fine, but I don't want to waste my energy on someone like you anyway." Ryuji spoke up with excitement, thrilled that it was finally his turn to step up. Walking past him, Ruka ordered coldly, "Finish this quickly." Ryuji chuckled and nodded, replying, "No need to tell me twice." Meanwhile, Minato carried the injured Yuika back to her seat. He placed her down and said casually, "Make sure you watch my match." Yuika nodded slightly, showing she understood. But it was only then that she realized something strange. Her body didn't hurt at all, and all her wounds had completely healed. Minato, unaware of her thoughts, slowly walked onto the arena. Even though he had bragged earlier that 100 mana was enough to beat Ryuji, he knew that if he didn't go all out now, he wouldn't stand a chance. He would keep his mana at exactly 100, using void magic with no chance. He wasn't setting up any magical barriers either, so if he took even one direct hit, it would probably be game over for him. The more he thought about it, the more thrilling it felt. Seeing Minato step onto the stage, Ryuji immediately shouted in excitement, "Sorry, kid, but I don't plan on holding back." Smirking, Minato retorted, "That works. In that case, I'll go easy on you." In an instant, the entire arena erupted, as cheers echoed throughout the crowd. "Ryuji, don't go too crazy. Go easy on the kid." Up on the stage, Ryuji unleashed his mana. Minato estimated it was around 8,000. To his past self, it would have been absolutely nothing. But right now, he could only use about 100 mana. Just like that, the second match between Minato and Ryuji officially began. Ryuji laughed as he summoned his magic, saying, "Don't hate me for this. This single blow would be enough to test whether Minato was the one who defeated those expelled students." Ryuji wanted to see if the kid could withstand his full-powered attack. But before he could even make his move, a beam of mana shot straight into the middle of Ryuji's forehead. Minato pouted in disdain. Too slow. This sight left the students in the stands completely stunned. It hadn't even been 3 seconds, and it was already over? Since Ryuji was knocked out, the victory naturally went to Minato. Ruka rushed over to check on Ryuji. her heart filled with shock. Did Minato really knock Ryuji out with just a single blow? She hadn't even heard him chant a single spell. What on earth did he do? While Ruka was still lost in thought, Minato's mocking voice reached her ears. I did exactly what you wanted, and wrap this up quickly, you know? Watching from the sidelines, Yuika immediately cheered happily. Awesome, he actually took him down. Ruka glared at Minato, her voice cold. Seems like you've got a little talent. Minato just laughed it off, not caring at all. As long as I'm better than you, can't you keep your mouth shut? Ruka gritted her teeth in anger, then immediately unleashed all of her magic power. Minato estimated it to be only around 10,000, but it was still much stronger than Ryuji's. While the two were facing off, the announcer's voice rang out again. A shocking turn of events has occurred after the second match. Contestant Kusanagi's fighting style has truly caught the audience's attention. The final match will be between Minato and Ruka. Everyone is eagerly waiting to see who will emerge victorious in the end. As soon as the match was declared to start, Minato didn't hold back and charged toward Ruka. Standing opposite him, Ruka didn't panic, calmly summoning her magic to counter. Minato knew very well that his magic power was currently only around 100, so naturally, the spells he used wouldn't be very strong. Because of that, unless Minato aimed directly at Ruka's forehead, he wouldn't be able to cause her any harm at all. Ruka had also realized that she shouldn't move around too much, opting instead to focus on defense. Just as Minato expected, Ruka defended herself with ease. Without moving from her spot, she used water waves to attack him. A barrage of powerful water jets rushed forward like wild blades. However, the next sight left Ruka utterly shocked. Minato easily neutralized all of her magic without losing a single hair. Ruka's eyes widened in astonishment. He hadn't even used any magic just now, so what on earth did this kid do? Not just her, but the students in the stands were equally confused, starting to whisper among themselves. Shouldn't he have been beaten up by now? He isn't even wet. What is going on? On the other hand, Yuika wasn't surprised at all. She was just wondering what kind of technique Minato had used to pull this off. Ruka was furious that Minato had countered her attack. She was absolutely certain he was hiding some kind of trick. With that thought, she launched another attack. Yet this time, Minato moved. He was like a dancer in mid-air, effortlessly dodging the water jets Ruka had just fired. Seeing this, Ruka's pupils shrank in disbelief as she cried out, "You dodged all of my attacks without even using magic?" Watching from the sidelines, Yuika couldn't help but frown. A mage can use another spell to counterattack. Two opposing attacks will still cancel each other out to some extent. Everyone knows that if you can't do that, getting hurt is only a matter of time. A Tier 2 spell is on a completely different scale and speed compared to a Tier 1. There's no way a guy like him could dodge all of that without a scratch. Ruka was sure Minato was just a reckless fool playing with fire. Minato seemed to know what she was thinking and couldn't help but chuckle. But that's fine. As long as you can sense magic power, dodging such weak attacks is no big deal. Well, you also need to be a little tough. At this moment, Ruka began casting Tier 3 water magic. In the blink of an eye, a water wave shaped like an arrow appeared, fiercely hurtling toward Minato. Seeing this, the crowd in the stands immediately cried out in shock. Tier 3 magic! If he gets hit by that, he won't even have time to reincarnate. With a loud boom, the water arrow exploded, splashing droplets everywhere in the air. Ruka slumped to the ground, exhausted, but smiled with satisfaction. There's no way he could have blocked that. But right at that moment, a beam of magic shot from afar, stopping right in the middle of her forehead. Looking at the person who fired it, Ruka cried out in shock. No way! How is this possible? Are you actually fine? How did you dodge it? Minato spoke casually. I used a spell that absorbs your magic, and then simply walked right through the center of your attack. The air instantly fell, dead silent. Ruka sat there frozen for a long time, completely unresponsive. Just when Minato thought she wouldn't say anything, she suddenly threw her head back and laughed out loud, simply walked right through it. Huh, so I lost, did I? Naturally, the result was clear. The victory belonged to Minato. Yuika quickly rushed over and asked, Are you okay? Minato nodded and replied, Yeah, I'm totally fine, and I won. Yuika smiled softly and nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. Seeing the two of them so happy, Ruka got up from the ground. She spoke indifferently. As promised, I won't mention this again. You can do whatever you want. Hearing this, Minato couldn't help but sigh in resignation. Still as proud as ever, huh? Thinking about it, he suddenly chuckled and joked, Yuika's wound is pretty shallow, you know. You really went easy on her. Man, if only our match had gone like that too. Hearing this, Ruka shouted in protest. Hey, no way. That didn't happen. Minato ignored her and continued. Yuika has gotten way stronger in just 2 weeks. I'm sure you noticed that, didn't you? You need to stop babying her so much. Yuika also made a firm promise. I'll definitely get stronger, so you don't have to worry about me anymore, sis. I promise. Ruka squinted at the two of them, hesitating for a long moment before nodding. Yeah, you're right. Thanks to this battle, the Mizuha sisters had grown closer. Watching them, Minato couldn't help but feel a warm sense of happiness. Right at that moment, dark clouds suddenly rolled in, carrying a terrifying aura that startled Minato. He quickly looked up, his expression instantly turning serious. This bizarre, magical energy, is it a calamity? Ruka and Yuika sensed it too. Everyone's face paled. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, Jun's gang was rummaging through Minato's desk, throwing his stuff all over the floor. After searching for a long time and finding nothing, one of Jun's lackeys grumbled, "He's only got textbooks and notebooks. This guy is a total goody two-shoes, man." Gritting his teeth, Jun muttered, "He has to have something, right? Otherwise, how could he use that kind of magic?" But just then, the lackey saw something and gasped, "What the hell is that?" Thinking they had found something, Jun quickly looked over. But what he saw left him utterly terrified. The sky outside was dyed a terrifying, blood-red color, throwing the three of them into an instant panic. As if realizing something, one of the lackeys cried out in terror, "It's a calamity! How can there be a calamity here?" Outside the arena, the reporters and students were in absolute chaos. No one expected a calamity to strike the Magic Academy of all places. Minato's face was extremely grim. How could a calamity happen right now of all times? Don't tell me this has something to do with the incident in Shinjuku. The first calamity also happened in Shinjuku. Was this just a coincidence, or was it planned? While he was thinking, magic beasts began pouring out of a rift in space. Seeing this, the students panicked and fled. The instructor was also there, trying desperately to calm them down. But at a time like this, who could stay calm? Just then, a powerful blast of magic shot out, obliterating the beasts that were attacking the students. The one who fired the shot was none other than Minato. He shouted at the top of his lungs, "Calm down." His voice instantly quieted the students down. Though they were still terrified, they stopped running and stood frozen in place. Minato was pleased with this. He scanned the crowd and instructed, "In the early stages of a calamity, only low-level monsters will appear. It's best if we evacuate to the gymnasium." Saying that, he looked toward Ruka's group and suggested, "You guys should go too." Hearing this, they cried out in surprise. "What do you think you're doing, Kusanagi?" Minato calmly replied, "I need to save the people trapped in the buildings first." The instructor looked at him in disbelief and said worriedly, "You're going alone? You're being way too reckless." Ryuji quickly spoke up, "I'm going too, so that should be fine, right, instructor?" The instructor was still hesitating, but Ryuji raised an eyebrow and continued, "You've already seen what this kid is capable of, right?" The instructor hesitated for a brief moment, then finally nodded in agreement. "All right, I understand, but don't overdo it, okay?" Ryuji chuckled and replied, "Like I'd die that easily." Saying that, he glanced at Minato. The boy said nothing and just shrugged indifferently. Then Minato looked over at Yuika and said, "I'm off, then." Concern flashed in Yuika's eyes, and she whispered, "Be careful." Meanwhile, Ryuji called out, "I'm heading out first, kid." Ryuji's current speed allowed him to run at 10 meters per second. He wanted to see if Minato could keep up, but Ryuji was completely overthinking it. Minato immediately activated his magic and bolted forward. He zipped past Ryuji like a flash of lightning, raising an eyebrow and teasing, "I'll take the lead, senior." Ryuji's eyes widened in shock as he muttered in frustration, "What kind of crazy speed is that? Hey, wait up." Right after that, he quickly gave chase. Speed alone wasn't going to cut it, though. He was going to watch the kid's real abilities closely, down to the very last detail. And of course, save some people along the way. Minato couldn't care less about Ryuji. As he moved, he used his magic power to scan the entire academy grounds. There were 58 magic users in the building, but there was a chance some of them couldn't use magic anymore. If that was the case, he would have to check every single floor. At this moment, magic beasts had already breached the academy building, and students were trapped inside their classrooms, unable to escape. Minato saw this the second he leaped through a window. Without a moment of hesitation, he unleashed his magic to wipe out the beasts. His magic was incredibly powerful, leaving nothing but fallen beasts in its wake. While Minato was focused on killing the beasts inside the classroom, one of them lunged from the side, aiming for a sneak attack. It was almost like Minato had eyes in the back of his head. With a casual release, his raw magic ripped the massive beast's body to shreds. Soon after, Ryuji came running over, asking in a total panic, "Hey, is everyone okay?" But by then, Minato had already wiped out every single beast, with their lifeless bodies filling up the entire room. He casually brushed past Ryuji and said coldly, "I'm leaving the evacuation of the trapped students to you." Hearing this, Ryuji panicked and yelled out, "Hey, wait up! Going out there alone is way too dangerous." But before he could even finish, Minato was already long gone. Feeling totally left out, he muttered, "Where did he go? How is he that fast?" Ryuji couldn't help but think Minato saw him as dead weight. And honestly, what could he say to defend himself? That might actually be the truth, considering the kid literally wiped out those monsters in less than a second. Who on earth is this kid? But Minato had no idea what was running through Ryuji's head as he kept sprinting off into the distance. If they were outside, he could have easily vaporized them with a single magic bullet. But in these tight, enclosed spaces, he risked accidentally hurting innocent bystanders. Because of that, he had no choice but to continuously spam low-level spells to take them down one by one. But even that was more than enough. Minato effortlessly slaughtered the beasts with basic magic, saving countless lives along the way. True, it would take way too much time if he had to escort every single student back to the gymnasium himself. But luckily, he had a helper to do the heavy lifting for him. Throughout all of this, Ryuji had always been one step behind. But right now, he was outside, fiercely battling a beast while shouting at the top of his lungs, "I'll handle these monsters. Everyone, hurry up and get to the gymnasium right now." But the moment the words left his mouth, a sudden gasp of shock echoed through the air, making him jump. What was that? When he turned around to look, he was stunned to see a group of students safely wrapped in a warm glow of magic, gently floating down to the ground. Seeing this, Ryuji furrowed his brows in stunned silence. What on earth is Minato doing? Just who the hell is this guy? Looking down from above, Minato chuckled at Ryuji's bewildered reaction. He really does care about his underclassmen, doesn't he? They should be safe now, but right at that moment, his senses picked up something else. In a dark, hidden corner of the building, a terrified schoolgirl was trembling violently. Cornered by several vicious beasts, she had her back pinned against the wall, tears of sheer terror streaming down her face. There was absolutely nothing she could do. Completely helpless and at the mercy of the monsters, she could only scream for help at the top of her lungs. "Please, someone, save me." Just as one of the beasts was about to strike, a sudden flash of light zipped past, making her eyes widen in shock. She instantly recognized that brilliant light. It was the exact same light that had saved her once before. Before she could make sense of what was happening, Minato descended gracefully from the sky and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" Staring at him in disbelief, she stammered, "Kusanagi, was it? You who saved me?" "Yeah, that was me," Minato replied with a gentle nod. He reached out to pull her to her feet, but she immediately pressed on. "And that time back in our practical training class, was that you too?" Minato hesitated for a second before finally admitting, "Well, some unexpected things did happen back then." Hearing his confirmation, she bowed deeply, overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you so much. You've saved my life twice now." Minato brushed it off with a casual smile. "Don't sweat it. It really wasn't that big of a deal." Looking at the boy who had swooped in to rescue her twice, her heart skipped a beat, and a bright red blush quickly spread across her cheeks. Right then, Ryuji came running up from below, yelling, "All right, who needs rescuing next?" Minato glanced at the girl and said, "Just stick with him, and he will get you to safety." "I have to go." She tried to call out to him, but he was already gone in a flash, leaving Ryuji standing there scratching his head. Paying no attention to what they thought, Minato kept heading upstairs. There were still too many students trapped and surrounded by monsters. They couldn't afford to sit around and wait for the police. He had to take action now. Meanwhile, over at the Prime Minister's residence, the nation's high-ranking officials had gathered for an emergency meeting regarding the sudden calamity at the Magic Academy. Sitting at the head of the table, the Prime Minister spoke with a grim expression. "A catastrophic disaster has struck Kamui Magic Academy. The surrounding officials immediately began to panic and whisper among themselves. How could this nightmare be happening to us again? There hasn't been a single calamity since the last one 50 years ago. What are we going to do? The Prime Minister raised his hand to quiet them. We are currently trying to contact the Monster Countermeasures Division at the Metropolitan Police Department, as well as the Noble Mages. On top of that, the Ground Self-Defense Force is on high alert and ready to deploy, but one of the officials shook his head in frustration. With all due respect, the mages in the Self-Defense Force only specialize in handling natural disasters. None of them have any real-world experience fighting actual monsters. Of course, the Prime Minister knew this all too well. This was the harsh consequence of decades of peaceful living without ever worrying about another calamity. Their only hope now lay in the hands of the police and the noble mages. As those thoughts raced through his mind, the Prime Minister clenched his fists in frustration. The same nightmare from 50 years ago was happening all over again. But Ichikami Minato was no longer of this world. Who was going to save them now? Meanwhile, a police cruiser was speeding towards the Magic Academy. Behind the wheel, a female officer asked, her voice filled with doubt. Has a real calamity actually begun? Sitting in the passenger seat, a man with a deep, calm voice replied, Yes, there is absolutely no mistake about it. Hearing that, the female officer panicked and cried out, But we've been living in peace for so many years. So, this peace was only temporary after all? Inspector Shadu smiled calmly and replied, But that's fine. After all, that's exactly why we're here. The officer behind the wheel, Sergeant Karin Sanada, hesitated for a moment before speaking up. I'll do my best, sir. Right after that, the two of them rushed toward the scene. Meanwhile, a helicopter appeared in the sky above the Magic Academy. It wasn't backup, but a news crew. They were broadcasting the monster attack live to the entire country. The reporters who had been inside the academy earlier were also being evacuated to safety. As they continued their live broadcast, the instructors and students who could fight were outside, desperately trying to take down the low-level monsters. News of this disaster spread like wildfire, and everyone in the country was glued to their screens. Panic was setting in, and things were looking incredibly grim. Even the areas surrounding the Magic Academy were now under siege by the monsters. Nearby residents were in complete chaos, and the situation had spiraled completely out of the government's control. All of Japan had its eyes on the Magic Academy, everyone anxiously waiting for updates from the news. Some were terrified because they lived nearby, while others feared this disaster would turn into a repeat of what happened 50 years ago. To put it simply, the entire nation of Japan was descending into absolute panic. Back at the Magic Academy, Minato was tirelessly slaying monsters to save everyone he could, but they kept flooding the campus in overwhelming numbers. It was almost time for Phase 2. With each phase, new and even more powerful monsters would emerge. What's worse, they would keep spawning infinitely no matter how many he killed. As long as the boss was alive, the monsters would never stop coming. The boss would only show itself in the final phase, meaning Minato had to hold his ground until then. The more he thought about it, the more annoyed he got. This whole disaster was just a massive pain in the neck. After rescuing civilians from the monsters, Minato used his magic to teleport them downstairs. There were 20 people in this batch, and because they were scattered all over the place, just finding and saving them was a nightmare. But giving up wasn't an option for Minato. He rushed back upstairs to keep going. Meanwhile, inside one of the classrooms, June was desperately trying to fight off the monsters pouring in. However, his magic reserves were running dangerously low, and it didn't take long for him to start gasping for breath. Gritting his teeth, he muttered to himself, Damn it, I can't keep this up. I'm completely out of magic. On top of that, they weren't just dealing with ordinary monsters. A demon soldier had joined the fray. His lackeys were absolutely terrified, practically wetting themselves. But June refused to back down, screaming in frustration, That bastard Kusanagi took one of these down in a single blow. Why the hell can't I do it? The moment those words left his mouth, a mocking voice called out from behind him, Because you're weak as hell. June's eyes widened. Before he could even see who it was, a brilliant wave of flames erupted, incinerating the demon soldier into ashes right before the terrified eyes of the three boys. It was only then that June realized who had just saved them. It was the last person on Earth he wanted to see, Minato. Without sparing them a word, Minato simply turned around to walk away. June bit his lip in frustration. Not again. He had just been saved by this guy, yet again. Furious, he chased after Minato and yelled, Hold on, stop right there. Minato paused in his tracks as June aggressively demanded, "Why the hell did you save me? You're supposed to hate my guts. So why did you do it?" Shrugging indifferently, Minato casually replied, "No reason. I saved you because I could. That's all." Hearing those words, June's entire body began to tremble. He bit his lip, muttering, "You saved me. Just because you could? Is that really all there is to it?" But June couldn't accept that. He snapped, screaming, "Don't screw with me. You're nothing but a weak, pathetic loser." He ranted about how Minato didn't even use proper magic, demanding to know how he had gotten so strong so fast. Minato narrowed his eyes, looking at June with a cold gaze. The original Minato Kusanagi died in that car crash. I'm just the one who took over his body. June couldn't believe what he was hearing and yelled, "What? Are you saying someone can just cheat death and suddenly become a god? I'm the one who's supposed to be stronger here, so why did I lose to a piece of trash like you? You think you're strong?" Minato scoffed. He narrowed his eyes and asked coldly, "Since when do truly strong people find joy in stepping on those weaker than them? And weaklings don't waste their time humiliating people they think are beneath them. Your bloated ego blinded you into thinking you were actually strong." Deep down, June was so terrified that he couldn't even bring himself to think about fighting back. With that, Minato walked away, leaving June standing there completely alone. Before long, June's knees buckled and he collapsed to the ground. He knew deep down that he had just been running away from the truth, that he hadn't gotten a single bit stronger since middle school. He had been taking all his stress and frustration out on anyone weaker than him. Yet, he was saved by Minato, the very person he looked down on as the weakest of them all. He just couldn't swallow that bitter pill. June's two lackeys also stood there awkwardly. In the end, they had to accept that Minato had just saved their lives once again. They wanted to ask June what they should do, but he was already completely broken. Tears streamed down his face, non-stop tears of sheer regret and humiliation. Of course, Minato had no idea what was happening to them right now. He was still sprinting upstairs like crazy, slaying beasts left and right to save people. The higher he climbed, the stronger the monsters became. Demon soldiers began to appear, but Minato didn't panic for a second. He calmly unleashed his magic to strike them down. The beast managed to dodge his first strike, but Minato didn't miss a beat. He immediately launched an even higher tier spell. With a massive boom, smoke and flames erupted instantly, burying the demon soldier in a raging sea of fire. Minato narrowed his eyes at the pile of ashes before him, his face completely expressionless as he fell deep into thought. The growing number of demon soldiers meant the boss would show up any minute. With that in mind, Minato approached the students. Seeing them huddling in a corner, he tried to comfort them, saying, "Calm down, everything is fine now." Meanwhile, down below, Ryuji was yelling in frustration, "That little brat, how dare he dump all of this work on me?" Though he kept complaining, his hands never stopped casting spells to wipe out the oncoming monsters. There were just way too many beasts, and they were relentlessly hunting down the students. Ryuji did his best to shield the students behind him while fending off the beasts. He glanced back and reassured them, "I will protect you guys, so just stay close and follow me." Seeing him look so incredibly badass, the students couldn't help but look at him with pure admiration. But talk is cheap. With monsters swarming literally everywhere, how on earth was he supposed to handle this? Just as panic was setting in, Minato dropped down from the sky and said in a flat tone, "Let me help you with that." Startled by the voice, Ryuji jumped and yelled, "Geez, don't just pop out of thin air like that." Ignoring the complaint, Minato casually replied, "Just start running the moment I clear these guys out." Ryuji hesitated, completely bewildered. "Huh? But there are so many of them. How are you going to pull that off? We should probably find another way." But before he could even finish his sentence, a brilliant wave of flames erupted, incinerating the horde of beasts in an instant. Of course, the one behind it was Minato. This sight left everyone, including Ryuji, absolutely speechless. Seeing them freeze, Minato snapped them out of it. He said, "What are you standing around for? Move it." Coming to his senses, Ryuji quickly led the other students away. As Ryuji ran, he glanced back and saw Minato casually wave his hand, unleashing a wave of magic that instantly obliterated any beast trying to pursue them. Ryuji was completely blown away. This kid is unreal. He is absolutely insane. Minato remained focused on holding the line. Once he cleared the area, he scanned the surroundings to make sure everyone had evacuated safely. He thought to himself, "Everyone's safe, right? I'd better double-check the area just in case." Meanwhile, in another part of the academy, the instructor and the combat-capable students were desperately trying to hold the line. Yua was among them, but she was completely out of mana, stumbling and nearly collapsing from exhaustion. Fortunately, Ruka caught her just in time. Ruka said coldly, "If you can't handle it, get inside. You're just getting in the way." Yua immediately shook her head, refusing to back down. She protested, "I can still fight. We don't have time to rest." Hearing this, Ruka frowned in silent frustration. Ruka wanted to talk her out of it but didn't know what to say, so she could only watch helplessly as Yua forced herself to keep casting spells. Right then, Ryuji arrived with the rescued group and reported, "I brought back the trapped students." The instructor praised him. "Great job, get them inside." Ryuji handed the task over to someone else. He rushed over to the Mizuha sisters to ask how things were going. Ruka let out a heavy sigh and replied, "We can't hold them off much longer." Yua looked around and asked anxiously, "Where is Kusanagi?" Ryuji chuckled and smirked. "That kid doesn't have a single scratch on him. He's totally fine and going absolutely wild out there." Hearing that, Yua finally let out a sigh of relief. Ryuji didn't waste any time and joined the fray, casting spells alongside them, though he couldn't keep his mouth shut. Man, Kusanagi is on a whole different level. With him on our side, getting through this disaster is going to be a walk in the park. Yua nodded in agreement. "I think so too, senior. With Kusanagi here, we'll definitely make it out safe." But before she could even finish her sentence, the ground violently shuddered, sending panic through the crowd. The instructor screamed, "Evacuate! Everyone evacuate right now!" A massive wave of beasts had appeared right before them, and they weren't just low-level fodder, they were actual demon soldiers. Ryuji immediately panicked, shouting, "There's way too many of them. We have to get out of here." Hearing that, everyone wasted no time and turned on their heels to run. Ryuji and the Mizuha sisters ran for their lives too. There was simply no way they could face a horde of that size. But they hadn't gone far when Yua suddenly sensed something and glanced back. To her shock, the beasts were already being blasted by magic, their blood spraying everywhere like rain. Ryuji's group stood there, completely dazed. Out of nowhere, the magic police had arrived, led by Inspector Shogo, who was already barking out urgent orders. "Take them down, fast. Make sure the students are safe. That's our top priority." Right away, the other officers started attacking the beasts in front of them. Seeing this, the students in the back finally let out a sigh of relief. They were finally saved. As Sugo cut down a beast, he shouted to reassure them, "Don't worry, everyone. We'll get you out of here. Follow the evacuation route now." But Yuika spoke up, offering, "We'll help you guys fight." Sugo looked at her in shock and said firmly, "You're civilians. It's much safer if you evacuate to the gym right now." Before Yuika could even reply, Ruka cut in quickly. "We aren't ordinary civilians. We're mages." Sugo hesitated for a moment before finally nodding. "All right, fine. Support us from the perimeter then." Honestly, their backup was way too small, so they had no choice but to rely on these students. Talk about a pathetic excuse for a police force. Meanwhile, Karin was already busy healing the injured students. Elsewhere, up on the academy building, Minato spotted the police cars pulling up. He let out a sigh of relief and muttered, "Finally, the cops are here. I'll leave the rest to them. Although, I've got to say, they got here way faster than the defense force. Then again, this is a national-level disaster. How could a whole country be this unprepared? But who knows? Maybe they really are that incompetent. This country has been resting on its laurels for way too long. For now, I should just do what I can and see if there are any other students still trapped inside." Meanwhile, up in a helicopter, a reporter caught sight of the whole chaotic scene below and began broadcasting live. It seems the police have arrived on the scene, but the number of beasts shows absolutely no sign of decreasing. The entire nation is desperately waiting for the noble mages to show up. After all, we need their power for disasters like this. Everyone is praying for their help right now. Everyone is holding on to the hope that the noble mages will arrive any second now. The reporter on the scene looked straight into the camera and pleaded, "Please, noble mages, if you're watching, we need you to save us now." But back in the mansion of the Fuka family head, after hearing the butler's report, the old man coldly sneered, "Let them rot." The butler hesitated, asking, "Are you absolutely sure, sir?" The Fuka patriarch scoffed. "A minor disaster like this is something even the police can handle. There's no need for noble mages like us to waste our time." With that, he turned around to leave. Confused, the butler asked, "Where are you going, sir?" "To sleep?" the Fuka patriarch replied coldly. The butler didn't dare argue, bowing respectfully. "Sleep well, sir." Meanwhile, back at the Magic Academy, Sugo was desperately holding the line against the beasts, but the situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. He glanced at his subordinate and barked, "Can we clear the ones near the entrance?" The officer shook his head in despair. "No way. There are way too many of them." Sugo's face instantly grew dark. They were spawning much faster than he had anticipated. At this rate, they wouldn't be able to evacuate the civilians in time. Securing the perimeter was their top priority, but the backup still hadn't arrived. Now, their only hope lay in the hands of the noble mages, but they couldn't even get a hold of them. The more he thought about it, the angrier Sugo got. He couldn't help but roar, "Damn it. Where the hell are those fancy bastards when we actually need them?" Relying on academy students because they couldn't get help when it mattered most. It just showed how pathetic Japan's forces had truly become. Sugo scowled deeply. He had read about this before. There was a damn good reason they called this a natural disaster. Did the people of Japan suffer like this in the past? If the boss monster shows up now, we're completely screwed. And, as if on cue, his worst nightmare became reality. The ground began to shake violently once more, sending a wave of panic through everyone. Sugo bit his lip so hard it almost bled. No way. Is that demon general the boss? Yuika's face went completely pale. A monster like that was almost never seen in an area like this. Only a noble mage would even stand a chance at taking it down. Yuika knew they needed at least a tier 5 spell to even scratch it, but not a single person here could cast magic that advanced. Just as panic began to consume everyone, a massive wave of blazing fire came tearing toward them. Without a second thought, Ruka threw herself in front of Yuika. She collapsed right before Yuika's eyes, sending her friend into absolute panic, her eyes filled with terror and worry. Ruka lay trembling on the cold ground, her body shaking violently. She looked up and gasped, "Run. Yuika, run." But Yuika could only sit there frozen in shock, her legs refusing to move as the crowd around them fled in pure terror. Yuika clung to Ruka tightly, her eyes filled with desperate tears. Sugo and his magic officers fought with everything they had, but they were simply no match for the beast's overwhelming power. Ryuji was also completely exhausted, unable to even lift a finger. And then, right before their eyes, a massive silhouette emerged from the raging fire. At the sight of it, everyone's faces turned utterly pale. It was as if they had all accepted their fate. They were going to die here. Yuika squeezed Ruka even tighter, screaming out at the top of her lungs, "Kusanagi, please, save us, Kusanagi!" But the raging fire only blazed hotter, hurtling straight toward them. In sheer despair, Yuika cried out, "Minato!" As the intense heat drew closer and closer to everyone. The beast was gearing up to charge, but right then, it suddenly froze in its tracks. It saw something blocking its path. A massive surge of mana rained down from the sky, striking the beast. At that exact moment, a figure materialized right in front of Yuika. It was Minato. He looked at her seriously and said, "Sorry I'm late. Kept you waiting." Seeing him brought a brief wave of relief, but Ruka was in terrible shape, and Yuika's tears began to pour once more. "Kusanagi, she's..." Minato stepped forward to check her condition, finally speaking up. "She's fine. She just passed out." With that, he placed his hands on her and began the treatment. Still on edge, Yuika could only bow her head in silent anxiety as Minato focused on healing Ruka. After a long moment, he gritted his teeth and stood up. Seeing this, Yuika gasped and called out to him. Minato glanced back and said calmly, "I'll handle this, boss." Yuika froze for a second, but quickly nodded and agreed. "Okay." Instantly, a massive barrier of protective magic enveloped the entire area. Yuika gasped in shock. "What is this?" Ruka's wounds were also closing up at an unbelievable speed. The more Yuika watched, the more stunned she became. The other students, feeling this kind of magic for the first time, were utterly speechless. Karin stepped out from the inside, her eyes widening in disbelief at the scene. Is this tier 3 healing magic? Even she couldn't pull that off. Who on earth could? She quickly rushed over to Sugo, asking in panic, "Senior, are you okay?" Sugo shook his head slightly and replied, "I'm fine, just pushed myself a little too hard." Karin helped him up, her eyes scanning the area as she asked, "What's going on here?" Sugo shook his head helplessly. "I'm not sure either, but we have to protect the citizens until our very last breath." Karin grew anxious, hesitating before pleading, "But that's too dangerous. You could die out there, Senior." Biting his lip hard, Sugo said with grim determination, "But if we do nothing, Every single person here is going to die. Karin knew he was right, but she couldn't hide her worry as she spoke. This is basically suicide. In the end, everyone will. Our entire force has already been wiped out. Just as she said, a corner of the academy was engulfed in a sea of flames, with the magic police force completely annihilated. Sugo bit his lip, his eyes burning with frustration. Neither the defense force nor the noble mages are coming to help us. There's nothing we can do anymore. With the magic police giving up, the battle against the magic beasts grew even more desperate, and the flames roared higher into the sky. On-site reporters panicked, crying out, "This can't be happening. Even the police have given up. Is this really the end for us?" Back home, the viewers watching the live broadcast were gripped by fear. Everyone was on the edge of their seats, praying for a miracle. But right there on the battlefield, Minato stepped forward alone, walking straight toward the massive monster. Spotting this, Karin gasped in horror. "Wait, there's a student walking right toward those monsters. Is he insane?" Sugo panicked too, screaming at the top of his lungs, "Hey, get out of there right now." But Minato ignored the warnings. Stopping right in front of the beast, he let out a cold snort. "You've been having way too much fun running amok, haven't you?" The monster narrowed its eyes at him, its mouth continuously muttering, "Kill, kill." That terrifying guttural sound echoed through the entire area, sending a wave of panic through the students. Even Sugo and Karin trembled, as the sheer pressure of its aura weighed heavily on everyone. Right then, an earth-shattering blast rang out. Minato commanded coldly, "Shut your damn mouth." Angered by his attack, the monster threw its head back and roared. Instantly, a swarm of lower-tier magic beasts rushed straight at him. Minato frowned slightly, falling silent for a moment. Back when he faced the world's worst disaster, he had gone all out. But this time, he had to hold back a little for the sake of the people around him. While Minato was deep in thought, a massive surge of lightning magic surged toward him, engulfing him in a blinding flash of light in an instant. Seeing this, Sugo gasped, "Is he dead?" Everyone around held their breath, desperately scanning the smoke to see if Minato had survived. Amidst the chaos, a blinding burst of magic erupted, dazzling everyone. It was coming right from Minato's hands. The sparks of magic began to dance through the air, relentlessly wiping out the invading beasts. Watching this unfold, Sugo was completely dumbfounded. What on earth? Who is that kid? Not just them, but the reporters on the scene had also noticed Minato, though they couldn't quite make out his face. The cameraman tried to zoom in closer for a better look, but a sudden block of magic stopped him right in his tracks, ruining his shot. It was Yuika's doing. Minato was trying so hard to hide his true power, and this would allow him to fight without any distractions. Meanwhile, in the heat of battle, dozens of magical beams shot from both of Minato's hands, dancing wildly through the air. Wherever they struck, the beasts fell one by one. This sight leaves the inexperienced students completely shell-shocked. In utter disbelief, they gasp, "He is incredible. Are we actually going to be saved? He can really do this." But they do not have time to lose focus. Low-level magic beasts are still running wild, but luckily, there are still some who can use magic. Jumping in to take them down, Sugo yells to the others while fighting, "We have to do whatever we can. Back him up." Locked in combat with the boss, Minato cannot help but smirk when he hears this. The police of this era are not half bad. With that thought, he waves his hand, causing those magical beams to explode. This makes the boss absolutely furious. It quickly channels its magic. Seeing this, Sugo panics and screams, "Is that Tier 6 magic? That is almost on par with noble mages." He thinks it is over, that they are completely helpless. The spell the boss is casting is a Tier 6 magic called Fire Dragon's Roar, causing smoke and flames to erupt once again. The students are instantly paralyzed with shock. The reporters on the scene are just as hopeless. Sugo watches helplessly as the wall of fire surges right toward them. The raging flames are intense enough to swallow everything in their path, glowing with a terrifying blood-red color. Completely consumed by despair, even Karin can do nothing but pray for a miracle to save them. Sugo thinks that no matter how strong Minato is, there is no way he can defeat a force like that. Survival seems impossible. The only person who still believes in Minato is Yuka. She knows he can do it. If it is Minato, he can definitely pull it off. He will survive and save everyone here. Meanwhile, Minato quietly sizes up the demon boss in front of him. Sure, it is huge, but the bigger they are, the slower they move. And this demon general is pushing itself to the limit just to cast Tier 6 magic. So, If I hold back, I won't be able to scratch it. Huh? I really did not want to resort to this, but there is no other choice. With that, Minato reaches out his hands, summoning two different types of magic at the exact same time. In the blink of an eye, his raw magic power explodes. Yuka stares in awe at the massive wave of energy dancing before her eyes. Her eyes widen in utter shock, but deep down, a surge of pure joy washes over her. Right before everyone's stunned eyes, a giant serpent made of water magic emerges. Sugo stares, completely dumbfounded. Is that composite magic? At that exact moment, the demon general's fire dragon charges ruthlessly. Minato's water serpent does not back down for a second, rushing head-on to meet it. With a deafening boom, the two overwhelming forces collide. They twist and coil around each other, fire and water locked in a vicious struggle. Below them, the demon general frantically unleashes more magic, growling incoherent words: slaughter, humans, die. Instantly, the fire dragon swells in size, charging forward with terrifying force. Seeing this, Minato just scoffs in utter disdain. His giant water serpent lunges at the fire dragon, tearing it to shreds in a split second. But he is not done. The water serpent surges forward, instantly reaching the demon general. The beast is swallowed whole by the raging water, only able to gasp, "Why?" before it perishes. Minato watches it disintegrate without showing a hint of emotion. He scoffs. "Because you are out of practice. That is why." Though he says that, Minato thought the beast would put up a better fight. It turned out to be way weaker than he expected. With the boss defeated, the dark clouds part, and clear skies return to the Magic Academy. Minato looks up at the sky and smiles. It seems defeating the boss really did clear up the disaster. At the very least, he can finally enjoy some rare peace and quiet now. Only now do the students finally snap back to reality. They have actually been saved. Instantly, the crowd erupts into cheers, celebrating their narrow escape from death. Even the reporters on site are crying tears of joy. Karin lets out a sigh of relief, overjoyed. We are safe. The disaster is finally over. Meanwhile, Sugo is completely dumbfounded. He cannot believe a mere student like Minato just took down the demon general on his own. That is something even elite noble mages could not have defeated so quickly and effortlessly. Just who on earth are you? But before he can wrap his head around it, his legs turn to jelly and he collapses. He clicks his tongue, muttering that even his knees have gone on strike. Nearby, Minato walks up to Yuka with a warm smile. "See? I told you I would handle it." Yuka looks up at him, tears welling in her eyes. "Yeah, I always knew you could do it. Thank you, Minato. Don't worry about it." Minato shrugs. He shrugs it off with a casual shake of his head. But while they are talking, a swarm of students suddenly rushes toward them, giving Minato a mini heart attack. Before he can even figure out what is happening, the crowd surrounds him, showering him with endless praise. Minato sighs helplessly. It looks like he could not escape the spotlight after all, and he can already see his peaceful future, looking as dark and gloomy as that storm sky. Seeing his miserable reaction, Yuka cannot help but giggle. "You look absolutely miserable." The next day, the news is flooded with reports about the disaster at the Magic Academy, highlighting how a mysterious student saved the day. But everyone back at the academy knows exactly who that mysterious student is: Minato. Ever since the disaster, more and more people have been swarming Minato. Every time he steps into class, they crowd around him, bombarding him with endless questions, which is getting seriously annoying. Of course, not everyone is happy about it. Some jealous classmates have started talking trash behind his back, muttering stuff like, "Looks like someone got his butt kissed, and now he thinks he is a big shot." There is no way a regular student like him could actually be that strong. Just like that, a massive argument breaks out in class, splitting the students into two camps. One side is totally rooting for Minato, while the other refuses to believe a single word. Seizing the moment while everyone is screaming at each other, Minato slips out the back door. Seriously, these people are starting to freak him out. Right then, Yuika pops up next to him with a playful tease. "Rough day, huh, superstar?" Minato just lets out a heavy sigh and groans. "Ugh, don't even start." She giggles softly, keeping up the teasing. "Hey, you are the hero who saved everyone, so you have just got to deal with the fame, right?" Minato rolls his eyes, quickly changing the subject. "Whatever. By the way, you got transferred to S-class too, didn't you?" Yuika nods, looking pretty indifferent about it. Probably because of our mock battle and that whole incident. Minato narrows his eyes, sensing something off. "You don't seem too thrilled about it." Yuika quickly averts her eyes, pouting as she mutters under her breath, "No, I am. I mean, since a certain someone is going to be in that class too. Completely oblivious to her hints, Minato doesn't press it. Instead, he asks, "Oh, by the way, how is Ruka doing?" Yuika beams, clearly overjoyed. She is doing great. In fact, we have actually gotten a lot closer lately. You can tell she is genuinely thrilled about the breakthrough with her sister. And it is all thanks to you. With her eyes sparkling, she looks at Minato and gives him a heartfelt smile. Thank you, Minato. Meeting you here is hands down the best thing that has ever happened to me. Feeling a bit embarrassed by her intense gratitude, Minato gives her forehead a playful flick. Rubbing her head, a bewildered Yuika asks, "Ow, what was that for?" Minato scoffs, turning his head. Saying thank you once is more than enough. You don't have to keep repeating it. With that, he turns and walks off. Yuika stares at his retreating back, a soft smile spreading across her face. It looks like this young girl's heart has officially skipped a beat. Meanwhile, inside the Prime Minister's office, a tense meeting is underway with top government officials. The Prime Minister is busy making call after call. Finally hanging up, he lets out a deep breath and says, "With that, our emergency calls with the other nations are officially wrapped up." One of the officials asks with concern, "Finding the root cause of the second disaster isn't going to be easy, is it, sir?" The Prime Minister nods solemnly, but they are already doing everything they can to prepare for what is coming next. As rumors spread about the high schooler who took down the final boss, the officials continue their intense debate over the disaster and how Minato managed to obliterate the demon general. Back at the Magic Academy, Minato finds himself summoned to the rooftop once again. This time, he is joined by Ruka, Ryuji, and Yuika. The four of them stand there in awkward silence, the air heavy with tension. After what feels like an eternity, Ruka finally breaks the silence. "Kusanagi, I have a massive favor to ask. Please, make me your apprentice." Her eyes burn with absolute determination as she makes this shocking plea. Flashback to a few days ago, at the Mizuha family estate, where the two sisters are sitting outside. After a long, heavy silence, Ruka finally speaks up about this latest disaster. Her sudden voice makes Yuika flinch slightly. Ignoring her sister's reaction, Ruka calmly continues, "It seems Kusanagi was the one who actually stopped the disaster from wiping us out, right?" Hearing this, Yuika nods eagerly. "Yes. Kusanagi defeated the demon general boss using Tier 4 compound magic." Ruka stares at her in absolute shock. "Did you say Tier 4 compound magic? Yuika, do you have any idea how insane that is? That is a level of magic even elite high-ranking mages can't pull off." "But it is the truth," Yuika insists, nodding with absolute certainty. Seeing her sister's sheer conviction, Ruka hesitates before sighing softly. "Then it must be true. After all, my little sister would never lie to me." Yuika is taken aback. "Why are you so sure I wouldn't lie to you?" Ruka chuckles softly. "Because you have always been an obedient kid, ever since you were little. I always knew a good kid like you could never be a useless mage. But looking back, I realize I was far too harsh and relied way too much on force." Hearing her sister's rare confession, Yuika's heart aches with a touch of sadness. But then, she suddenly stands up and passionately declares, "I am going to get stronger. Strong enough so you will never have to worry about me again. So please, just believe in me." Yuika's resolve is stronger than ever. Her sudden outburst catches Ruka off guard, but a warm smile soon spreads across Ruka's face. "You really have grown up. Come here, Yuika." A flicker of pure joy shines in Yuika's eyes. Ruka falls silent, her mind drifting to Minato. His power is absolutely terrifying. It goes far beyond any student, and might even surpass her own father's strength. With that thought, Ruka looks up at her sister. "Can you do me a favor?" Snapping back to the present, Ruka is now standing on the rooftop, waiting in tense silence for Minato's response. She knows that if she just keeps going down her current path, she will only ever be a standard high-ranking mage. To shatter her limits and climb higher, she desperately needs Minato's help. Taking a deep breath, Ruka bows her head in sincere apology. "I am deeply sorry for how I insulted and looked down on you before. Please forgive me." She knows all too well just how incredibly selfish her request is. Yet, she is willing to swallow her pride and cast aside her dignity just to ask him. Her voice carries a desperate, pleading tone. She bows low, her voice trembling. "Please, allow me to." Before she can even finish her sentence, Minato coldly cuts her off. Sure, why not? His incredibly casual and instant agreement leaves Ruka completely frozen, utterly unable to process what just happened. Minato repeated it one more time, I said I'm taking you on as my apprentice. Ruka was still a bit flustered, and she asked skeptically, why? Now it was Minato's turn to be confused. He asked, huh? That's weird. Weren't you the one who wanted this in the first place? Ruka quickly replied, well, yes, but I did so many terrible things to you. Shrugging indifferently, Minato casually replied, well, you already apologized, so I forgive you. Besides, you wanted me to accept your apology, right? That's all there is to it. Ruka was completely stunned. Was his answer really that casual? Right then, Rui quickly chimed in. Hey, then count me in too. Minato didn't argue. He pouted and agreed, fine, I guess teaching one or two more people won't hurt. Seeing that Ruka was still lost, Rika explained, he's just that kind of person, you know. Ruka narrowed her eyes at Minato, thinking to herself that he really was a strange kid. A little later, at the Magic Academy's classroom, Minato and Yuika were called in, having no idea why they were summoned there. Standing before them were Inspector Sugo and Sergeant Karin. The two of them bowed deeply to Minato and said sincerely, first, please let us thank you. If it weren't for you, both the citizens and our team would have probably been wiped out. Minato sighed helplessly. You guys have been thanking me non-stop since the interrogation. I think that's more than enough. Is there something else? Sugo nodded slightly and replied, the investigation into the disaster is officially closed, but there are still a few things that caught our attention. Minato couldn't help but ask in surprise. Something that caught your attention? Sugo didn't beat around the bush and stated his purpose. Kusanagi, you awakened your magic abilities after getting into a car accident, correct? Everyone around you testified the same, so there shouldn't be any mistake. But during our investigation, we heard someone say that you've been acting like a completely different person ever since the accident. Hearing this, Minato froze, a look of vigilance flashing in his eyes. Ignoring his reaction, Sugo continued, your personality changed, and your power skyrocketed abnormally, even becoming strong enough to defeat a demon general. The more he spoke, the more confused the others in the room became. Unable to hold back her frustration, Yuika demanded, wait a minute, what are you trying to say? Realizing he might have overstepped, Sugo frowned and muttered, let's change the question, then. I'm asking if you know who the Black Mage is. Both Minato and Yuika were stunned. What did they have to do with this so-called Black Mage? Sugo slowly explained. He's a mage who's been taking out all the stray magic beasts around here, helping citizens under the cover of night. Videos of him are going viral all over the internet. Haven't you seen them? With that, he showed the video to the two of them. Standing beside him, Karin seemed to realize something, but Yuika was still completely in the dark. Frowning, she asked, what does this have to do with Kusanagi? Sugo calmly answered, because the two of them are quite similar in both build and age. He added that while the Black Mage is rumored to be quite a renowned mage, their magic attributes don't match up. Not to mention, the time he started active duty perfectly aligns with when Minato was discharged from the hospital. Hearing Sugo's words, the instructor sitting nearby turned completely pale, looking extremely anxious. Karin remained silent, while Sugo kept rambling on. Using magic in the city without a license is illegal. Since this has drawn too much public attention, the police had no choice but to step in. Hearing that it could lead to severe punishment, Yuika glanced at Minato, her face filled with anxiety. Sugo also stared intently at him, his voice cold. If you confess, we promise to do everything we can to lighten your sentence. So please answer honestly. Are you the Black Mage? No, I'm not. Minato confidently shook his head and denied it. Hearing this, Sugo let out a smile. He said cheerfully, got it, so you're not him. Well, that's a relief. Right after that, Sugo and Karin stood up to say goodbye. Thank you all for your time. We're leaving now. The two,